Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is currently 7:51 a.m. and today's date is the 23rd of November 2024. How are you doing this beautiful morning? It is Saturday morning. Yes, y'all. The year is coming to an end. Isn't that wonderful? Another year is coming. We're going to get older. We're going to get wiser and we're going to give thanks to God that we are here and that we are doing great. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? What is going on? Let me know what is going on in the chat. Good morning. Yes, sir. Okay, so of course, the title of my stream this morning is titled Dear America. Why do I say Dear America? America's been a blessing to me 100%. I keep saying that, and it's like, it's the truth. And America's been a blessing to me. I get to live my life here in the United States. Um, I get to experience different culture, different environment, different type of people, and I'm just glad that I'm here and thankful to God. And I know big things are gonna happen in the future, even if I'm like, dear Lord, bless me right now. But I know in future good things are gonna happen. And I haven't slept all night for some reason. I've been like my brain has been just thinking about so many things and how I can get my family straight. Okay. All right. With that being said, how is your morning going? Did you have breakfast yet? Did you have breakfast yet, people? Or you don't plan on having breakfast? Let me know. Let me know. I ate breakfast around like 4 a.m. So I'm not hungry right now. And I don't think I'm gonna be hungry like today because after I'm done streaming, I'm gonna go to bed. But this stream is probably gonna be like for 5 to 8 hours. I don't know. But let's see how it goes. Okay, let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Let me put the polls up. Oh shoot. Okay, so the polls are up and ladies and gentlemen, it's a beautiful day. What is going on with Trump hush money? What is going on with this Trump hush money sentencing and how it's been postponed indefinitely? What is going on here? Let's take a look.
Let's talk about some of these headlines with former Fox host Geraldo Rivera. He is currently News Nation's correspondent at large. Geraldo, thanks so much for being with us.
Hi, Brianna. Nice to join you. Thank you very much.
I first want to get your thoughts on Gates and his withdrawing from contention. Are you surprised that Trump didn't end up going to the mat politically for him?
I am relieved, tremendously relieved. I don't know if I am particularly surprised. Matt Gaetz is a toxic stinker of a legislator. I think that he would have been a horrible choice at the Department of Justice. He's barely a lawyer. He's never prosecuted anything. He has a couple of hours in a family firm down in Florida. His sex with the underage alleged sexual encounters with the underage young lady, the 17-year-old in Florida, and the threesomes, and then the New York Times releasing the diagrams of how he paid off scores of these ladies allegedly with PayPal and Venmo. Is just a lowlife. I don't know, how the president picked him. I will never know. Seems that it was an impetuous choice. There are a lot in that potential cabinet, Brianna, that are very controversial, but at least they are arguably competent. Not like this guy who tried single-handedly to destroy the House of Representatives, going off their, the Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. It's just, it is a relief, and Pam Bondi, in compared to Matt Gaetz, is the best choice you could possibly make. I mean, whatever the relative quality of these two people is profound, and I wish her the best. I've known her for years, interviewed her many times. She was a regular on my At Large show on the weekends, and often run into her in the green room at Hannity. She's a real prosecutor, a county prosecutor, with vast experience. Yes, she's controversial with Trump University and a bunch of other things that I've heard you mention, but she's the real deal. You may not like her politics, but...
Well, to that point, Geraldo,
well, that's a good
do you think she's independent?
I think that's a fair question, and I think that we have to watch and see. I'm not sure. Would she be Merrick Garland? No. On the other hand, she's tough on crime. I think that she'll do an excellent job from the prosecutorial point of view. Politically, I don't know if she'll go along with Trump on everything. She certainly is a close friend of the president-elect, but I hold out hope for her, and I rely on her. When she was reelected, Brianna, she got 55% of the vote. So the people of Florida have judged her and decided that she was doing a good job, Brianna.
So I do want to ask you, with Gaetz gone, now there's more focus on these other picks. And there are a lot of critics of Trump's defense secretary pick, Pete Hegseth, who say that he's unqualified. People like Congressman Jason Crow, Jake Auchincloss, Senator Tammy Duckworth, among many other veterans. Last week, you said of your former colleague that I think it would be a very, very steep learning curve for Major Hegseth, but I think that if anyone can do it, he can do it. And you said some very positive things about him. I wonder, has your opinion changed at all since this police report from the 2017 uncharged investigation into a sexual assault allegation against him came out?
Also, a fair question. I did not know about that 2017 alleged sex assault. I think that it certainly merits investigation, and people should ponder its significance in terms of his confirmation. But I go back to what I said last week. I don't retract that at all. I know Pete, Major Pete, pretty well over the years, and Fox and Friends weekend, and have socialized with he and his wife Jennifer. And I think that he has to get enormous deference for the fact that he is a legitimate combat veteran, twice awarded the Bronze Star, one of the foremost advocates for veterans in our country. He's very popular among that community. Can he run a business with 3 million employees? I don't know, but I do know that everybody that has any center-right kind of feelings believe that the Defense Department has gone too ordinary. Too woke is the term that they use. Too much with DEI and not enough with ferocity and lethality and war fighting capabilities. So maybe Pete will inspire us to that while keeping obviously the care, the treatment of GIs foremost in his concern. My wife Erica and I disagree with Pete on his opposition to women in combat. You mentioned Senator Tammy Duckworth, a helicopter pilot, lost both of her legs in combat. Tulsi Gabbard, a colonel with combat experience, also a combat veteran. She will be his colleague in the cabinet if both are confirmed. So I think that Pete is wrong-headed in some of these big issues, but I also think, I go back to what I said before, I think Major Pete is one of those guys, Brianna, you just trust them. I don't like the tattoos and all that stuff, but I have tattoos too.
That's interesting. And it is interesting to get your perspective as someone who's spent a lot of time with him. But I also want to ask you about Dan Bongino, because I'm sure that you saw this. He's being floated as Secret Service director, the possibility of, I mean, there you go. And I just want to be clear for our viewers who aren't familiar. You two sparred a lot on Fox, and man, am I being understated when I say that. How would you feel about him being Secret Service director?
I can't imagine anyone who I feel more fiercely combative with than Dan Bongino. If he were to walk into a bar and I was having a beer, we probably square off. We disagree on everything. I think he has his own set of facts. I think he's a provocateur. But I go back to what I said about Major Pete. I have no issue at all with his honesty, his credibility, his character, his patriotism, his love of the Secret Service. I think all those things are positive for Bongino. And I think that in some ways, all of these people in the cabinet, and you could name others as well, Dr. Oz, are great on TV. They are bigger than life. They're great communicators. I see where the president-elect is going with this cabinet. Can they do the job, the day-to-day, the administrative stuff, running these businesses? And they are giant businesses, even though they're government agencies. I guess we'll see. Some will, some won't. But with Bongino, I would, let me put it this way. If I was a target and Bongino was on the job, I feel that Bongino would keep me safe. He would do the job, Brianna.
That is very interesting. Geraldo, it's always great to have you. Geraldo Rivera, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Delighted. Thank you very much.
Up first, Donald Trump's transition troubles. This week, his pick for Attorney General withdrew from consideration, and his choice for Defense Secretary tried to build Senate support amid sexual assault allegations, as Republicans on Capitol Hill walk a tightrope, handling Trump's controversial nominees.
A great day of momentum for the Trump-Vance administration.
Less than 24 hours after that show of self-confidence, Matt Gaetz pulling the plug on his bid to be Attorney General.
Mr. President, are you reconsidering the nomination of Matt Gaetz?
No.
But Trump's support for Gaetz ended after getting reports at least 4 Senate Republicans couldn't get past a House ethics investigation into claims Gaetz had multiple sexual encounters with a minor, which he denied.
I know enough people that were a hell no.
Trump quickly nominating former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi to lead the DOJ, as his transition team scrambles to secure GOP support for other cabinet hopefuls.
The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
Pentagon picked Pete Hegseth on the Hill with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, dealing with a police report a woman accused him of sexual assault in 2017.
He's going to have to answer those questions with regard to anything that's in his record.
Hegseth is not alone. Some Republicans also non-committal about Health and Human Services nominee Robert Kennedy Jr.
We got a process. He's got to go through the process.
And Tulsi Gabbard's shot to lead national intelligence also in question after supporting Syria's dictator and blaming NATO for Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
This is not a place for a Russian, Iranian, Syrian, Chinese sympathizer.
Here with me today, New York Times journalist and the Interview podcast host, Lulu Garcia-Navarro. Reihan Salam, president of the Manhattan Institute and National Review contributing editor. Politics and policy contributor at Bloomberg, Nia Malika Henderson. And conservative pollster and New York Times opinion writer, Kristen Soltis-Anderson. Welcome back, everyone. Kristen, let's start with the Gaetz rejection by Senate Republicans. How big a setback for Donald Trump?
I think I mentioned on the show last week that this was Donald Trump was a raptor testing the fences. He has discovered that they are electrified, that there are some places that Senate Republicans simply will not go. I think that Gaetz was always going to be the hardest sell. I am not surprised to see him have to withdraw. I do think that the Republican senators want to get to yes on everybody else, and I think that includes Pete Hegseth.
We'll get to that in a moment. But I do want to talk about the message here. Trump was riding high after the election, picking cabinet nominees at a record pace, telling the Senate to go on recess and give his choices a pass. But now Gaetz appears to be the earliest failed cabinet pick in modern history. Nia, how big a reality check for Donald Trump?
Well, listen, I think Donald Trump thought he was going to be able to muscle Matt Gaetz through. If you think about it, this is his second defeat in the face of this Republican Senate. He really wanted Rick Scott to be the majority leader. They picked John Thune. So now with Matt Gaetz, they've sort of said, no, thank you to Donald Trump. He was threatening a lot of these folks with primary challenges that were going to be backed by Elon Musk, and they still turned their backs on what Matt Gaetz was going to be. And I think he sort of has misread or overread the mandate, overread his ability to power through this Republican Congress and this Senate.
I want to pick up on that, Raihan, with you, because I think there was this sense, Trump certainly never said it explicitly, but there was this sense that he was just going to come into town and sweep away a lot of the traditional guardrails, like the Senate, like some of the other constraints on a president. And in this very first test, the guardrails held.
Well, I have to say, there's some reporting which suggests that this choice of Gaetz happened pretty improvisationally, shall we say, while they were all gathered together on the plane, and Susie Wiles was back in the back of the plane, not hearing about it, right? His chief of staff, his designated chief of staff. And similarly, in a conversation with Maggie Haberman, an inside source in Trump world seemed to suggest that were Gaetz to go away, it would be all right, and you'd go back to the drawing board. Some of us already believed that some of this is improvisational. Some of this is testing the guardrails, number one. Number two, some of us also believed that the genius of the framers is that, guess what? Senators are elected to 6-year terms. Senators are jealously protective of their institution and their prerogatives. And so the idea that he was going to somehow get all of these Republican senators, all these senators, period, to subordinate themselves to him, it was always a bit of a fanciful sense. I think that this was very, very predictable.
Lulu?
I mean, what I think is this. Everyone's sort of touting that the guardrails held. It was 4 senators who were the guardrails in this particular case that didn't give Matt Gaetz the vote. That's a very, very small group of people.
We don't know what the number is because it wasn't a vote.
It wasn't a vote, but we knew. But
there were at least 30 who raised concerns, right, in reporting.
But, I mean, regardless, the point is he was trying to steamroll the Senate. And the Senate said no.
Yeah, but he was trying to steamroll the Senate with an absolutely unfit.
That was the point.
And more reporting came out throughout this process that really put him in a difficult position. I have to say, had there not been more evidence that he had contact with that 17-year-old, that he was grooming high school students, I think it would have been a different story. At the end of the day, look what happened in the House. They actually still haven't released that report on him. They were trying to protect him. And so I don't know. I don't see this as some sort of like celebration of the system working.
Lulu, as we said in the setup piece, some of Trump's other picks that we named also face headwinds. Do you think that other nominees will be rejected or, just to do it delicately, pull themselves out? And if so, who do you think is in the most jeopardy?
I think Tulsi Gabbard is probably going to be in the most jeopardy.
She's the choice for Director of National Intelligence.
She's the choice for Director of National Intelligence, and I think the process isn't just, we haven't even gotten to the place where they're actually on the Hill yet and testifying. What's happening now is the media is digging into all these people. And what's happening now is that people are really, focusing on them. And so I actually think the more that's going to come out, the harder that it's going to be.
Nobody's going to replace anybody else. Matt Gaetz was the only, I would say, sacrificial lamb. However, like everybody's going through this time. Cam Bundy's going to get through. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, what do they have on Tulsi Gabbard now? The only thing is, well, she's a Russia-loving, China-loving. Syria loving. That's the only thing they have, bro. That's the only thing. And the only person who has problem with Tulsi Gabbard is Nikki Haley, apparently. Our dear Nikki Haley has an issue with Tulsi Gabbard. Dear Nikki Haley. Thank you for tuning into the live show. Double tap your screen. Let's give the likes. Let's give the show a like. All right. All you have to do is double tap your screen twice to give this video a like. Let's get it.
For some of these people. But again, I've been on the record as saying from the beginning that I thought, they're all going to get through. So,
This
don't
has
take
always
my word
happened.
for
Well,
it.
let me ask you, Ryan, do you think other Trump nominees will go down?
I think it's entirely possible that it will happen. My guess, as Kristen was saying, is that Republican senators are going to, generally speaking, want his nominees to get through. But, think back to Bill Clinton. When he was he was very important to him to have a female attorney general, the first female attorney general. He went through Zoe Baird, then Kimball Wood, then finally Janet Reno, someone that he did not know at all. These things happen. What's happening now is that the cycle is much faster. The media frenzy is much more. And when Donald Trump does something, he's doing things that other presidents have done, but it's more lurid, it's more crazy, it's more of a spectacle.
I only would push back to the extent to say that it is not unusual for presidents to lose some picks. George H.W. Bush lost John Tower.
Absolutely.
The difference is that Trump seemed to think after his reelection that he was going to come into town and remake the rules, and he didn't. One other thing that people have noticed about Trump's picks, how many come from television? Pete Hegseth, Dr. Oz, Tulsi Gabbard, Sean Duffy, Mike Huckabee. Kristen, what do Trump's picks, these ones in particular, say about his priorities?
Well, people are always looking for someone who they are comfortable with, and Donald Trump is very comfortable with people he has seen on television. He also prioritizes showmanship. He prioritizes messaging. And I think he thinks by choosing people who he enjoys watching on television, that will put a good face on his administration, and that on the policy stuff, that can all get sorted out by him just saying, no, I want this, get it done. And as long as somebody is a good face on television, it will make his agenda work.
Yeah, I mean, he's very big on charisma. He's very big on looking the part. Whether or not that plays with these Republican senators who were appointed to 6-year terms, they have been there before Donald Trump. They're going to be there long after Donald Trump. So I think some of these folks, you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, I think somebody like Pete Hegseth also might have an issue because what Trump likes isn't necessarily fitting with some of the qualifications that these senators are looking for. And it's not enough for them to be able to say, well, Donald Trump won the election. He's got all chambers, and we're just going to rubber stamp his piece.
But Lulu, I'm asking a somewhat different question, which is, what do these TV hosts, and look, some of them were, Huckabee was the governor of Arkansas, but what does his attraction to these TV hosts say about Trump?
What it says is that he is interested in how this plays to the general public. He wants to dominate the media narrative. He is fascinated by television. He wants these people to go out and be his spokesperson. And really, he thinks that that is why he won the election, that he was able to kind of dominate the new media game, that he was really able to penetrate parts of the country that were not penetrated before. And I think that he believes that these people are going to be able to do that. And again, he's planning on radically remaking government. And so he's going to need spokespeople to sell that to the American people. So maybe he's right in choosing these people.
Any sense of what you would have needed to have done to get on the list?
I think based on the reporting that I'm hearing is that there was a collection of information that is gathered. I think my sense is that this would go to the types of places that she was traveling to. So what I think this does is it opens a line of communication for the Senate as they're conducting the confirmation hearing to ask, where are these places that she's been going as a private citizen, as this reporting pertains to her being on the list, as I understand it, earlier this year? What types of places was she going? Countries, what types of contacts? Was it foreign leaders? Was it in countries that are of national security concern? That's what I would take from this, is that the particular places she was traveling were of national security concern. So I do think that this was an algorithm issue where the combination of the places she was going, perhaps the nature of the people that she was meeting with, then triggered this particular alert for her, which then just provides a secondary mechanism for TSA and for the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that the people who are getting on planes are doing so safely.
Andy, I think we have your voice back, all importantly. I don't want to place too much faith. I think we've learned a lot of lessons about placing too much faith in any particular algorithm, but these algorithms are built, they're designed to protect the country's national security and to keep track of things that perhaps you might not notice otherwise. Can you give a sense of why someone like her would end up on a list like this?
Sure. So there's a couple of things to really point out here. This is a program that was designed to help screeners and security folks like TSA air marshals be aware of individuals who might present a risk, but who are not people who are currently watch listed, right? The terrorism screening database is the nation's watch list of terror subjects or people who are suspected of involvement in terrorism. One of the quote unquote rules that this system uses to identify people is to first make sure that the person they're thinking about is actually not watch listed. So if you were watch listed, you would never be included in the secure flight program. This is designed to find people who are not known by the government, are not thought of as being terrorists, but for whatever reason, the places they traveled, the people they contacted while they were there, have raised in some minimal way a level of concern, and one that could be addressed by additional screening before you get on the plane. So you might have to go through the magnetometer twice or speak to the TSA person for some longer period than you normally would. And it is designed to do, Jim, exactly what we've been told since 9/11, which is connect the dots, right?
Yeah.
Find those people who we're not even aware of and subject them to some level of scrutiny so we can make sure that we've resolved potential threats.
Listen, as I was reading this story, I personally run into this. I remember when I had a lot of stamps in my passport from countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, I got an extra layer, just a few more questions when I was going through, for instance, airport security via London. Maggie, I wonder, we've seen the president back away from Matt Gaetz when it became clear to him he didn't have the votes in the Senate. And by the way, with quite alarming accusations about his personal behavior here. Questions about Tulsi Gabbard go beyond this watch list. Let's be frank. I've spoken to people in the intelligence community who have hard questions about the fact that she has parroted Russian propaganda on issues of national security to this country. Do you believe the president sticks by her regardless?
Look, I think, number one, he's not the president yet. It's sort of remarkable to me as we were talking about these nominee rollouts. He can't nominate anybody yet. He's not in office yet, number one. Number two, I do think he feels differently about Tulsi Gabbard than he did about Matt Gaetz. I think Matt Gaetz was done. Matt Gaetz's name had come up before that plane ride where Trump made up his mind to do this or, leaned into doing it, to announcing Gaetz, and then he pulled back. He was sticking with him, but he was pretty clear with people. Gaetz had a high bar. Gabbard has flown under the radar more because of all the attention on Matt Gaetz. She is obviously getting more attention now. Trump is somebody who has also said things that are more in line with how Vladimir Putin looks at the world than U.S. leaders typically do. So I don't think that's going to be something that would make him back off. He really likes her. She joined him in debate prep. He has grown very fond of her. A lot of people around him have grown very fond of her. I think it would take a lot for him to back off of her, frankly. We'll see what happens as we get closer to the potential for hearings. Yeah, to your point, listen, one thing Tulsi Gabbard did is around the time of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, she tweeted placing blame for that invasion on the Biden administration and on NATO, which, by the way, is not too far off with J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect, has said about the war in Ukraine. Van, I wonder what you think the political fallout is here, because there certainly is an appetite for change in Washington. We saw that in the results of this election, and President Trump seems to be serving that with some of these appointments. But let's be frank, in potential Senate confirmation hearings, when on national television Tulsi Gabbard is asked about comments that she has made, American people will hear that. I mean, does he maintain that political support for someone like her?
Well, look, I know Tulsi Gabbard. I consider her to be a friend. I knew her before she was in Congress. I know her dad, who was a great lawmaker in Hawaii, pro-environment. She has a big opportunity and a responsibility here to clear up all this stuff. There's a big cloud over her. I don't care about this algorithm because, as you said yourself, algorithms are just tripwires. That's not any kind of definitive proof of anything. But it does create an opportunity for Tulsi Gabbard to get in front of the American people and explain all this stuff. People don't yet understand why she says the stuff she says, why she does the stuff she does. And if she would just use this moment, maybe she can clear some of this stuff up. She's going to have one of the most important jobs on planet Earth because U.S. intelligence is key to Western security. It's key to global security. And so I don't care about this algorithm. I do care about the cloud over her, and I hope she takes this opportunity to clear some of this stuff up.
Joe, I wonder what your perspective is, because I've spoken to sitting Republican lawmakers who have concerns about Tulsi Gabbard, not because of this watch list, the couple of months she spent on that, but because of the views that contradict U.S. assessment, bipartisan assessments as to who America's true adversaries and threats are: Russia, China, Syria, etc. They have concerns, and you can understand those concerns, right? Because, I mean, it used to be bipartisan that folks look at Russia as a threat to this country, or the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad. In your view, should she be the director of national intelligence?
Well, again, first and foremost, President Trump has the right, as the president-elect, to nominate individuals that he believes will further his foreign policy vision. I do think that we can't have it both ways. We're having a conversation about algorithmic tripwires that have foiled many people that never rise to the level of being in charge of the intelligence for the national intelligence for the United States of America. And so if we understand that, yes, oftentimes brown people, black people get caught up in this nonsense, then maybe perhaps we should not be having a national conversation about the fact that she got caught up in this mix. I do think, to your further point, is she the right person for the job? I think that just because you might actually have agreements with Russia does not necessarily mean that you were a foil for Russia. At the end of the day, there are critical arguments to be made about the fact that the president of Ukraine and many people in the United States Senate wanted us to have preemptive sanctions that might have deterred Vladimir Putin from driving those tanks across the border into Ukraine. And there were people in this country on the political left that prevented us from having those preemptive sanctions. And so, yes, there is a robust conversation about foreign policy that can have. I agree with Van. She has the opportunity now to have that critical conversation with the nation and with the senators. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think trying to act as if somehow she is not fit for the job is in many ways inconsistent with individuals that have held this post before and other presidents that have been given the purview to nominate who they choose for roles when they might not necessarily have the prototypical profile for a particular position.
Well, D&Is have typically had quite an extensive experience at the top levels of the U.S. intelligence community.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. In my opinion, Tulsi Gabbard is definitely a strong woman. She's a veteran. She's served the United States. And, that is one person you would want to have some sort of leverage and, some sort of power when it comes to the intelligence of the United States, or the information that passes around the country. So I don't know why anybody even has a problem with Tulsi Gabbard in the first place. Tulsi Gabbard shouldn't even be somebody that anybody's talking about, saying you don't want to confirm her for, you know, director of intelligence. But it's like director of national intelligence. But it is what it is. The left is always going to have their own reservations about, um, you know, anything Trump does. Trump has always been that person that they're going to talk about, regardless of how great the people have spoken, the people voted for in popular vote, electoral college. They're still not getting the fact he's been given a mandate, but these people are not going to let him do his job. Anyway, what is going on here?
Fanatics won't learn. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, it's a Friday before Thanksgiving, so it's 2024. So, of course, we're looking forward to 2028. All right, now bear with me. It's clear to us that a growing number of never-Trumpers, the anti-Trump media, neoliberals, are trying to convince themselves, and you, that Trump's victory wasn't as significant as conservatives would have you believe.
If you look at the raw vote from 2020, he's still off of what Biden got by a good long ways. And
Donald Trump won the presidency with 49% of the vote, 48% of the vote. We lost with 47% of the vote.
Did he win an election? Yes. Did he win a mandate? I don't believe so. It was a
The New York Times pinged out the same message today in a column by Peter Baker titled "The Landslide That Wasn't." Baker pointed out that Trump won with one of the smallest margins of victory in the popular vote since the 19th century, and that Trump world is selling the illusion of a landslide in order to ram through Trump's agenda. Well, first, what incoming president doesn't use his victory as a reason to enact his policies? Isn't that the entire point of running and winning? Second, and the press knows this, it's not just the number of votes that Trump received, which is impressive. It's where he got them, from whom, and what he had to overcome to get them.
He's expanded demographically the Republican coalition, the coalition that elected Trump in this election. It is younger, it's more blue collar, and it's more diverse than any Republican coalition really in modern political history.
Yeah, modern political history. And as independent journalist Glenn Greenwald noted on X, Trump won a higher percentage of votes in New York City than any Republican candidate since George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988, 36 years ago. Now, that is huge. It turns out issues actually mattered to these Trump voters. And we all know the problems that New York is facing because of Democrat policies.
You take a look at outside the battleground where Trump made some of his biggest gains. They were in states like New Jersey and New York and California, big blue states. He didn't win any of them, but he made big gains because of this kind of a shift.
Democrats can continue with their fantasy thinking, minimizing the shift toward the GOP among Latinos and African Americans, among even young people and urban voters. But Democrats are just hurting their own party. And we can never forget that Trump did all of this while being outspent 3 or 4 to 1, and while he was being pummeled by venal, agenda-driven journalists with the most defamatory slurs that were then amplified by other leftists who are rarely right, but never in doubt. And perhaps most impressive was Trump's victory despite being relentlessly hounded by political hatchet men and women in our legal system. More on the big news from Judge Merchan later in the show. But again, the key here is why they're trying to ride the idea that, well, they didn't lose by that much. Because that narrative suggests the Democrats really don't believe they need to make big changes to their approach. Certainly not to the issues that people care about most. Why should they? The victory wasn't that big for the Republicans. If they only lost because Biden dropped out late, or because Trump's appeal is sui generis, or because Harris wasn't a good communicator, then what they face as a party is really, if that's their thinking, just a personality or maybe a comms problem. Well, the problem, of course, with that is they were wrong on substance, wrong on the economy, wrong on war, wrong on the culture, and wrong on the border. And the results for innocent Americans have been heartbreaking. Do you think that Laken Riley's mother thinks Democrats just have a comms problem given what happened to her daughter? This is how a mother reacts when she learns that something horrible has happened to her beautiful daughter.
Okay, let's step over here. Come on, let's go. Come on out the road. Come on out the road. We had the incident happen. It's not good. I don't want to tell you yes or no because I don't have names. I don't know who anybody is. I do know that this is a pretty serious incident.
This is one of the main reasons Trump won. He felt their pain. He felt their rage. Riley was murdered by an illegal alien, Jose Ibarra, and the incoming border czar, he knows the anguish as well because he's seen this play out too many times, courtesy of politicians who don't give a damn.
I've seen so much tragedy. I've talked to hundreds of angels and moms and dads who buried their children because they're killed by illegal alien. This is the latest. You know, I've talked to little girls as young as 9 years old that were raped multiple times by members of cartel. When you look in her eyes and everything innocent and pure has been ripped from her soul, and her life will never be the same. I mean, it's just, I'm tired of it.
Now, Democrats can't respond to this story or any others like it because they've become so accustomed to standing up for the rights of the illegals.
Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an
it,
apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
Those are tragic cases, but there is no but. And there's no apology forthcoming now, not from her and not from the Democrat Party. Their so-called post-November 5th autopsy should include a close examination of the autopsy reports of the Americans savagely murdered by illegals. But instead, their sanctuary leaders will proudly protect the migrants.
That's not going to happen on my watch. We will not be participating in misguided efforts that harm our communities.
We're not going to ask our police force to serve as ICE agents. We're not cooperating with that madness.
The city of Los Angeles will not participate in any collaboration with ICE.
And Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu is among the worst.
We do not need the federal government's help in stepping in to cause mass fear. We have laws on the books that ensure that we do not cooperate on civil immigration detainers.
Safer? Now, these rapist migrants terrorized children. As you heard Holman say, destroyed their innocence, ripped it from them. Look at them, Mayor Wu. Read the police reports. Read the charging documents. For Open Borders Democrats, this isn't about safety. It's not about safety of the migrants are being brutalized too. It's not about the safety of the American people. It's about politics and their own fanaticism. And even child rape, even a nursing student out for a run getting her head bashed in, it doesn't matter. Even migrant gangs terrorizing formerly quiet neighborhoods, none of it matters. Trump's approval rating is already at an all-time high of 54%. And it's only going to go higher if Democrats refuse to learn the real lessons of 2024. Their policies were destroying America's economy, our sovereignty, and our peace of mind. But if Democrats won't learn the obvious, they're not only stupid, well, they're giving great news to the Republican Party in 2026 and for J.D. Vance in 2028. And that's the angle.
Red alert. Democrats are sending out a holiday warning. Don't go to Thanksgiving dinner this year. Your conservative uncle might rat you out to the MAGA police.
People are rightfully alarmed. They have a reason to be alarmed. If this thing goes way south, autocracies go south real fast and things get ugly and people get asked to do things and turn people in and point people out and turn on them. If you think that you can vote for what people see as their destruction and then demand that they still are cool with you and kiki with you and have Thanksgiving with you, like, I think you're kind of missing the point.
Jerry, pass the stuffing. Wait. What sign did you have on your lawn? No one's getting turned in unless you're here illegally. Trump said his revenge will be success, not liberal work camps. Trump got some pretty bad news this week, and he didn't react like a dictator. The Senate wasn't going to confirm Matt Gaetz. So did Trump thrash about and dissolve the Senate? No. He respected the check and balance and picked a new attorney general. Not something Hitler would have done.
We don't have a king. We don't have an autocrat. We don't have a dictatorship. The framers were very clear that We have separate and co-equal branches of government. We've got checks and balances.
Yeah.
The Senate, I think, it did its job in terms of advice and consent. And that is a good thing for America in terms of how we move forward.
Trump swapped out Gates with someone who has a much better chance of getting confirmed, former Florida AG Pam Bondi. J.D. Vance says Attorney General is the most important job in the government, only behind the president. Trump's had his eye on Bondi for a while.
I'd consider Pam Bondi for anything. She's doing a very good job. She's always done a very good job. But in some form, I'd love to have her in the administration.
Just like with every nomination, they're going to try to dig up dirt on Bondi. But all they've found so far is she's got a great resume.
One reaction I got from inside the Justice Department last night was, this is Matt Gaetz with a better legal resume.
She will be every bit the loyalist that Matt Gaetz would have been, just with a little more legal experience and a little less baggage. Or so it seems.
Pam Bondi is, without a question, qualified to be Attorney General. That level of experience is on par with or better than most United States Attorneys General that we've seen over the past 50 years or so.
You know Bondi's a winner because the deep state sounds awfully nervous. Pam Bondi is one of those smart women Mark Cuban said Trump avoids. Add her to the list. Tulsi Gabbard, Kristi Noem, Stefanik, Susie Wiles. Cuban's eating his words.
I have a message for Mark Cuban from all of us here tonight. Underestimate us. This is going to be fun.
They underestimated MAGA. Now it's time for a little fun. The legal cases against Trump are withering away. The sentencing for the porn star shakedown's been indefinitely delayed. And the Fani Willis trial's on its last legs. So the lawfare's on ice, and the Attorney General confirmation's looking smooth. Now Trump can focus on the rest of his administration. President Trump just filled a position very close to his heart: Treasury. Billionaire hedge fund manager Scott Bessent got the nod. Bessent's openly gay. I guess the gays aren't going to Gitmo. Next, Trump's going to shake up the FBI and the Secret Service. Former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino is being considered for director. Bongino's been very critical of the agency's top brass after Trump was almost assassinated twice over the summer. If Bongino gets in there, I guarantee you he's going to put an end to the cover-up, and we'll finally find out what really happened in Butler and West Palm. And former Congressman Mike Rogers' name was being tossed around for FBI director. Not sure why. And then this happened.
Mike Rogers is a totally reasonable, logical selection for FBI director. If in fact that's the decision President-elect Trump makes.
Andrew McCabe endorsing Rogers, that's the kiss of death. Not long after that, Dan Scavino said this, just spoke to President Trump regarding Mike Rogers going to the FBI. It's not happening. In his own words, I have never even given it a thought. Not happening. FBI director is a position Trump's thinking a lot about. He needs to get this one right. This is the same agency that wiretapped his campaign, cooked up the Russia hoax, covered up the laptop, and raided his house. Its current director, Wray, said he wasn't sure if Trump actually got shot in Butler. Wray still has time left on his term, but he's either got to resign or make Trump fire him. It's his choice. The Washington Post is reporting that Trump's going to fire Jack Smith's entire team. They'll resign, too, if they had any dignity. We need the FBI and the DOJ to stop criminals and terrorists, not go through the First Lady's underwear drawer. It'd also be nice to tighten up some of the agency's spending. You ready? A whistleblower says the FBI blew your money on stupid little office activities like a painting class where agents could get to know colleagues and unleash their creativity. Oh, and they also did office yoga. Not sure why they just can't stretch on their free time. And there was lunch and coloring. They described it as a fun series of coloring sessions during lunch that you will get to see your colleagues' artistic sides. Elon, we found some government waste there. Trump's FBI director is going to have their work cut out for him. And so is every other person Trump picks. Trump wants to radically transform the government. It's what he campaigned on. It's what Americans voted for. In 2016, his agenda got swallowed up by D.C. bureaucrats and rabid Democrats. But Politico reports all the forces that were coming for him have been kind of defanged and obliterated. This time it feels like Trump found his footing in Washington and has his people around him. They believe in his plan. Reporters who've been covering Trump for a decade say after 2 assassination attempts, 4 indictments, and a landslide, Trump has a, quote, different sort of confidence and nerve. Trump's carrying the momentum from the election all the way to the inauguration. Then it's time for him to execute his vision without delay.
Tonight, all right, please make sure to keep the deep state in your thoughts tonight. Well, Joe Biden's State Department reportedly they had a therapy session. Why? To help government workers cope with the election results and Donald Trump's big win. I'm sure emotions are running very high. I'm sure they're going to bring in comfort animals any day now. But tonight, we end the week with more good news for Donald Trump. The lawfare against the president-elect in New York has officially fallen apart. Earlier today, Judge Juan Merchan canceled Donald Trump's sentencing, granted his request to proceed with a motion to dismiss all charges, which they should have done, and they never should have been brought in the first place. Anyway, while Trump appears to be in the clear, you just never know, though, with this judge and D.A. Bragg. You don't know. Now, coming up, we're going to show you how New York's politicized and weaponized system of justice is putting everybody in danger. But we begin with something very interesting you might not have noticed after the election. All across the country, there were many devout Democrats who were not just angry that Donald Trump won, they were also in a complete state of shock. Many totally, completely blindsided by Donald Trump's resounding win in both the Electoral College and the popular vote. Now, despite the disastrous last 4 years, the terrible approval numbers of Kamala and Joe, a wave of polls, we had pollsters on regularly in favor of Donald Trump. The Democrats, what, they didn't see it coming? The legacy media didn't see it coming? Probably because the primary source of news is legacy media. Where, look, I said in 2007, journalism in America is dead. It's been dead and buried, with a few exceptions like Fox News for some time. And it's become a far-left echo chamber. That is what has emerged. Political hacks at the AP, Reuters, nearly every single major newspaper, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, USA Today, you know, the other 2 cable news outlets all repeat the same Democratic talking points day in and day out. Most Americans, including most of you watching tonight, you have known this for years. And most Americans now have tuned out the noise. Now people have choices. First, they had talk radio, Fox News. Now they have social media. Then they have podcasts.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. Woo-wee. What are we going to do about all of this conversation around Trump speak? Some people are even saying he shouldn't be picking anybody right now. He should not be nominating anybody. He's not even the president yet. That's what someone on CNN said. She said he's not even the president yet. He is the president-elect. He should not be nominating anybody. He should wait till he resumes office before he picks anybody out. What? Bro. Man, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel, man.
Podcasting. They are very selective in where they're getting their information. Democrats, they just have their heads in the sand. Legacy media is refusing to change course. Even as their numbers decline, their influence is totally evaporated. Now, take a look at this headline published just yesterday. This on MSDNC. Quote, this makes me so angry. Laken Riley's killer, Laken Riley's killer never stood a chance. The guy was caught red-handed, a young nursing student with her whole life ahead of her. And he was out stalking, looking for somebody to rape. He murdered this young nursing student, her whole life ahead of her, brutally murdered by a Harris Biden unvetted illegal. He deserves the death penalty, not just life in jail. But that article seemed to blame, quote, political controversy for his conviction. No, it was the act of murder that convicted him. The brutal, evil, senseless act of murder. The only political controversy here is that this criminal lowlife was even inside of our country to begin with, invited by Joe Biden, in his own words, across wide open borders to our south. Kamala and Joe, no vetting, 12.5 million unvetted Harris Biden illegals. How is it possible to become that detached from reality that you'd publish a headline like that? Why do liberals, why do these extremists put so-called rights for illegals, which they don't have, over your safety and your security? According to a study from the Media Research Center, during their primetime shows, MSDNC, they didn't spend a single second on the Laken Riley trial. Not a second. Meanwhile, fake news CNN, they barely covered it at all. Quote, between the morning of November the 15th, when the trial started, and Wednesday, November 20th, 2 p.m., when Jose Ibarra was ultimately sentenced, fake news CNN and MSNBC's primetime coverage of the case amounted to a single 161-second news brief on the Monday night edition of CNN's Laura Coates. I guess we should tip our hat to whoever she is. Illegal immigration, violent crime were two of the top issues in this election, according to almost every poll. And yet, these so-called cable news outlets, networks, completely ignored a major story during their primetime coverage. But by the way, they've been ignoring illegal immigration for 4 years. They went along with the big lie. Oh, the border's secure, the border's secure, the border's closed. No, it wasn't. We here at Fox told the country the truth. They didn't. They didn't focus on high prices, inflation, the bad economy. They didn't focus on higher gas prices. They're not looking out for all of you.
How is this even possible, guys? How is this even possible, guys? What is this? Was this the border in 2022 on May 14th? It says Eagle Pass, Texas. Was that the border? What? Man, rest in peace to Laken Riley. Rest in peace to Laken Riley. That lady had her future right in front of her, and she could do anything she wanted to do. She could become anything she wanted to be. And of course, Jose Ibarra or Jose Ibarra, the illegal migrant who did something really outrageous. And he's been sentenced now. He's been sentenced to life. I'm sending love to her family and just hope that God really embraces them with love and warmth, because it's really hard to lose a family member. It is just absolutely devastating.
And that's why people are leaving them in droves. And it gets worse. The big three networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, they dedicated about 4 times more coverage to an insult comics dumb joke about Puerto Rico 3 hours before Donald Trump ever got on stage at a Trump rally at Madison Square Garden than the Laken Riley murder trial. Apparently for ABC, CBS, and NBC, a bad joke from a comedian, and I'll grant you he probably shouldn't have been there, definitely. All right, they're saying that's more newsworthy than the murder of a young woman, nursing student by the name of Laken Riley at the hands of an unvetted Harris Biden illegal immigrant. By the way, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of dead Americans. We have dozens and dozens of Americans, including children that have been raped. We have thousands of Americans victims of violent crime because of Harris Biden unvetted illegals. This is
where we are right now. These people never say the truth. When they do say something, they say something like this. Listen.
The Department of Justice or other agencies to look at election security broadly in America. I think people need to know that their elections are secure up and down the food chain from, every election there's problems, there are issues, right? And so I think, listen, I think everyone should welcome, listen, I think everyone should welcome it.
That
Let's
all
have
of
it
a
over
sudden
with.
Trump won in this election and suddenly there are no issues.
No, I think
I haven't heard him talk about a single problem.
No, I can tell you there are lots of problems in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania over the course of the night. And remaining up until Bob Casey conceded this week, you had Democratic elected county officials saying we're not going to follow the law, we're going to count ballots in opposition to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
They conceded the race.
But those elected officials in Bucks County said we're going to deny the law. We're going to oppose what the Supreme Court said.
Maybe they did that, but they still lost. They lost.
I understand, but my point is that people don't have when the county commissioner who's elected sits there and says, I'm not going to follow the law, I don't care what the law says, we should investigate
One of the things about Trump's election lies is that he keeps describing it as election security, as you just did, when that's not at all what he is talking about. He is talking about ballots that were tampered with in Venezuela and all kinds of ridiculous things. Let's take the time machine back to February of 2023. This is a Washington Post story. Former President Donald Trump's 2020 campaign commissioned an outside research firm in a bid to prove electoral fraud claims, but never released the findings because the firm disputed many of his theories and could not offer any proof that he was the rightful winner of the election. That's according to 4 people familiar with the matter. Meanwhile, over at the Justice Department, this is what they're going to be potentially handed with. I want to start with Jack Smith's team, right? Because Jack Smith is already moving to basically dissolve this case against Trump because he cannot be prosecuted as president. He cannot be tried as president. Trump now wants to go further down into the ranks. Career people who are supposed to have protections, will he be able to do that?
Well, it'll be hard. I have worked in the federal government, and I've worked in the Department of Justice, and I have tried to fire people. It's not as easy as it looks. Now, there are alternatives here that are unpleasant. One is you transfer people to jobs that are so beneath them or inconvenient or unpleasant that they decide to leave of their own accord, which does not negate the idea that they could bring suit that they were put in that position
retaliation,
as retaliation.
Basically, yeah.
You know, on the other hand, people may just decide to leave because of those atmospherics. But I mean, the cart is before the horse here, Abby. The idea is, if you want to bring in OPR, the Office of Professional Responsibility, and launch a legitimate investigation into whether their conduct was above or below board, and then take personnel actions, that's one thing. Firing them and saying, we're going to investigate it after, is a little upside down. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Well, the idea, right, isn't necessarily getting to the bottom of the matter and making sure all these people are ethical and honest. The idea is retribution and making this team of professionals who showed up to do a job they were asked to do by their bosses, whether the boss is a Republican or a Democrat. That's what civil servants and professionals are trained to do. It puts that sense of public service not only under scrutiny, but makes it really unattractive for people who are
that's the
happy,
point.
right? Happy to serve in a government regardless of their politics.
I think you have to look at this other wrinkle, which is one of the things that he started to do and ultimately didn't complete at the end of the last administration, the Trump administration, and has promised to do again, is this Schedule F employee initiative, which is to hire people who pass the loyalty test, not protected by civil service, easier to bring on, and more importantly in this model, easier to fire. So now basically you could have thousands of people who wouldn't be on the level of political appointees, not protected by civil service, but doing those jobs, who would basically be there only for their loyalty and their willingness to carry out instructions.
I get the Republicans' argument that you get to win, you get to pick the bosses, you get to pick who you fire. I understand that to a certain degree, but as I was working in races around the country, nobody said anything about what y'all are talking about or the reason why they were going to go vote. Democrats lost this election because of gas and groceries, other things that happened, but none of it was around making sure that the election was safe. None of this was around retribution, even though he talked about it in all the rallies, people thought, but the voters that I dealt with from New York to California, this is not. So I think this comes back to bite Republicans as it continues, because it will not stop here.
Well, it's about political capital, right? How much political capital the president has. When you start out, any administration has so much political capital. How you choose to expend that political capital is incumbent on the president. So if he does, as like Chuck says, if he spends it on getting people through that he really thinks can effectuate change, at the grocery store, the gas pump, putting in people like the new Secretary of the Treasury, other people who are really going to effectuate change and make things happen, that's one thing. If you're going to go chase ghosts and try to push people through who may not get confirmed by the Senate, you're going to burn a lot of political capital in the Senate. They believe they're an equal body. A partner. They've read the Constitution a lot, those senators.
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that got appointed tonight. I just want to make sure before I talk a lot of trash on you that you didn't get a job tonight, because there's like 15 of us before I got up here that got a job. I'm going to talk smack on you, but if you're going to be assistant FBI director, I don't want no part of it.
I don't know. Listen.
You got news for us tonight?
No, listen. I was.
Go ahead.
I live in Arizona, so everybody talks about how we count votes. There was some very sensible election integrity pieces of
legislation that got vetoed by our governor. That phrase, election integrity, has turned into a combative phrase. We all want elections to be quick and the votes counted quickly. We want it to be easy to vote and hard to cheat. And you can't even work on legislation right now. We had some good people in our county board of supervisors leave, Republicans leave, because of how they were treated over the 2020 election. Right. But the citizens in Arizona, the only place I disagree with you is that where we are, it takes so long for us to count in Maricopa County, and then everybody complains it takes so long, but they won't let the measures get through legislatively to fix it.
So, Mike, I'm curious about, you're in a state where Carrie Lake was, she was like
the number one
queen,
election denier.
Right? Like there's Trump and then there's Carrie Lake, essentially. And she didn't win.
Right.
For a second time now in a row. How do you think real voters who maybe they actually did vote for Trump this time around and they didn't vote for him the last time around are going to see this effort to just stay on this issue that has already been settled?
Well, I think it's wait and see. It's let's see what they actually do. The conjecture right now and what they're saying may happen. If he does it, I think there's going to be some pushback from some people saying, well, I thought they would have learned the lesson in 2022 that 2020 cost them in 2022 was not cost effective for them with the way they fought about 2020. So if they do that again, they're going to have trouble coming up in 2026, I think.
What happened in Arizona is you had a whole lot of people that voted for Donald Trump and a guy named Ruben Gallego, because I worked on that race for 2 years. And I think that's the biggest difference is you can't now say that there was some kind of thing going on at the top of the ticket, because in places like Michigan and in Wisconsin, the Senate candidates got less votes than Harris and still won because people went into the ballot box and voted for Donald Trump and left.
To your point, Abby, and to Chuck's point earlier, what Donald Trump and the campaign did was amazing, right? They created this coalition.
Thank you for tuning into the live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get the likes up, okay? Let's get the likes up. I know you guys are watching the live stream, but please let's get the likes up. All you have to do is double tap your screen twice. See, 1, 2. 1, 2. And you would have liked the live show, okay? Double tap your screen twice and give this video a like, okay? So we can tell YouTube algorithm that we are enjoying the stream, okay? Double tap your screen twice to get this like up, okay? Let's get to 100 likes. We have over 600 people watching the live show, and we are not getting the likes up. That is just not acceptable, okay? I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in for sure. Every single time you guys tune in, we go live every single day. This is going to be a marathon, okay? We're going to be live for a while. It's Saturday, so I haven't had night sleep in like 2 days because my family member is in the hospital. However, I'm believing God that everything is going to go, great, because God is the ultimate. God is the greatest. So I know everything is going to work out. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in one more time. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up, guys.
Of like working class white rural voters.
Don't trigger me.
Black and brown working class voters in the cities, right? It was really, truly masterful, right?
Don't make me admit none of that.
And those folks, right? Those folks are counting on what Chuck said. They want lower gas prices. They want, they feel inflation every day. And so to them, I think a lot of this stuff they're not really focused on that. They want to see what the results are. There's an incredible amount of pressure going to be on this administration to get costs down and get things going.
Urban, it sounds like you think it's a bad idea.
I think it's a waste of political capital.
All right, my particular hobby horse right now is.
Okay. I don't know why Nikki Haley was saying stuff about Tulsi Gabbard. Just because the 47th president-elect said he wasn't going to have anything for her in his administration. We shift, whatever his name is. I mean, that's what Trump said. She calls him Adam Schiff or shift. I mean, that's why Nikki has something to say. Every time she always has something to say. That's how she has something to say during the election. She was like, well, Trump shouldn't be saying things he's saying because he should focus on the economy and the border. And it's like, bro, just support your candidate. Support. Now, back then when he was a candidate, support your candidate. Now he's the president-elect. Support the president-elect. Can you just support the president-elect and stop having reservations?
All right, I want to go to Chad program right now. Gates is now officially the former pick of Donald Trump's for be the next attorney general. Chad, what happened?
Well, this is rather remarkable because Matt Gaetz was just here on Capitol Hill last night. He met most of the day with J.D. Vance and other Republican senators, members of the Judiciary Committee. There were some, like Marsha Blackburn, who kind of signaled that they would probably support him. But we knew that there were deep-seated problems with this nomination. And, he left the building last night and said, I look forward to doing this work and taking care of fentanyl and doing issues like that at the Department of Justice. Here is some instant reaction from Capitol Hill. Roger Wicker, the Republican senator from Mississippi, says this is a, quote, positive development. Remember, we think that the president-elect may have been burning an awful lot of capital here and putting a lot of Republican senators in tough spots who might not be willing to support this nominee because they viewed him as so badly flawed. Ron Wyden, who is a Democratic senator from Oregon, says that this is not surprising, and he said considering his manifest unsuitability. Now, here's the interesting dimension of this, Neil. So you had Matt Gaetz resign from Congress last week, and in his letter that was read on the House floor, he said, I do not intend to serve in the new Congress. Well, here's what's interesting. He was duly elected to the new Congress just a couple of weeks ago. So even though he wrote that letter and is not a member of the House of Representatives right now, he could write back to the clerk and say, sorry, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to go through the confirmation process to be the Attorney General, and I do intend to serve in the new Congress. Now, what is this all about? The math. Remember, we talked about them losing maybe 3 members, maybe even more if they go to the Trump administration in the House of Representatives. So we know that Elise Stefanik was going to step aside to become the UN ambassador, Michael Waltz to become the national security advisor, and then Matt Gaetz. So you had these numbers dwindling in the House. Now, we've not heard, to be clear here, if Matt Gaetz, in fact, will serve in the new Congress. And this all comes in the shadow of this Ethics Committee report that the Ethics Committee refused to put out yesterday. It seemed that the Democrats on the committee wanted it published. Michael Guest, the Republican from Mississippi who chairs that committee, said that there was not an agreement in the committee to put it out. And so I pressed House Speaker Mike Johnson on that this morning, and he said it was under his impression that it was not finished. And he also indicated, when I asked him directly, did he put his thumb on the scale to try to persuade the Ethics Committee not to release that report? He said, no, I certainly didn't do that in my role as Speaker of the House. So the question now, the Ethics Committee in the House, regardless of what Matt Gaetz' status is, they still have this Ethics Committee report. It's possible it could come out at some point. It's possible that Democrats and probably some Republicans, right after the Thanksgiving recess, they were talking about having a resolution to pry that loose from the Ethics Committee and vote on that on the House floor. That won't come until after Thanksgiving right now. But Matt Gaetz will not be the Attorney General nominee.
Joining me now is House Foreign Affairs Committee member Congressman Darrell Issa. Congressman, should Ukraine be allowed to use U.S. missiles to strike inside Russia? It was President Biden who allowed that. Should he have done it?
You know, Ukraine should have been allowed to bring this war to a peaceful end, one that was negotiated from a position of U.S.-backed strength, and they weren't. So now in the last minutes of this administration, this is a very questionable tact and one that President Trump's going to have to straighten out in just a matter of days.
It puts President-elect Trump in a bind, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It creates a situation in which clearly he's going to inherit a much more volatile situation. And quite frankly, I suspect the outgoing administration is going to say, oh, we already tried that. We did that, trying to take any credit from some initiative President Trump undoubtedly will author.
What do you make of Putin's nuclear saber rattling? Is that all it is? It's just a symbolic?
You know, the most important thing to Putin is to cling to power. If he uses nuclear weapons, he will lose his hold on power. So I don't suspect that it's real, but we have to take it seriously, just as 10,000 North Korean troops being added as cannon fodder have to be taken very seriously.
Congressman, Israel's military says it seized a stockpile of Russian weapons in Lebanon. They say many of these weapons are modern and they came from stockpiles in Syria. This is not a good development, is it?
No, not at all. And as much as 40% of what we find in Hezbollah caches came in through as processed weapons through Syria. Others came in as components, some of them from Iran. The reality is that we have to deal with more than just Hezbollah or Hamas. We have to deal with those who supply them, which includes Syria, which is backed by Russia, and then, of course, Iran, that is backed by Russia and China right now.
You may be the next chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House. If you were that chair, what's your priority number one?
One of the number one priorities is to engage all the members of the committee in being educated and prepared to help the Congress make good decisions. One of the others that's critical is Foreign Affairs has to team up with armed services so that we can lead the effort on military aid to other countries and our diplomatic mission. It's something that's been sorely missed during the last 4 years. Clearly, I have a long-standing friendship with incoming Secretary Rubio, and I know he appreciates the role of Congress, so I hope that we're working very closely together.
Congressman Darrell Issa, thanks for joining us this morning.
Welcome back. We are exactly now 1 month away from a potential government shutdown on December 20th. Speaker Mike Johnson pushing for a continuing resolution again, which would extend the deadline into early 2025 and Trump's second term. Republican Ohio Congressman Max Miller coming out against that plan. He's urging Congress to pass a full-year deal so Trump can quickly move his agenda forward and not be slowed down by a funding fight. House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris wants to attach the SAVE Act to the government funding bill. The SAVE Act would require voters to provide proof of citizenship when voting in federal elections. Joining me now is Wisconsin Congressman Brian Stile. He's the chairman of the House Administration Committee and a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Would you support that, putting the SAVE Act attached to a budget, funding bill?
At the end of the day, this is going to be President Trump's call as to what we want to lead with as he comes into office on January 20th. All of us would like to see the SAVE Act passed. We're going to have an opportunity to get real election integrity legislation into law when President Trump comes to office on January 20th. If we want to be able to clear the deck for the president and get the spending bills done first, so we can focus in on the big things when he arrives, that's just great. If he would like us to do a short CR into the beginning of next year so that we can get through this gap period while we have Democrat control in the Senate and then hit the ground running next year, that works also. At the end of the day, it's a play call that the president is going to make because there's so much work where we need to get our country back on track. I'd love to see us get the spending bill done for the year. But at the end of the day, I think President Trump is going to make that play call, and we're going to be in a position to execute it.
I mean, we probably would not be in a position to watch swing states doing recounts right now. It is, after all, November 20th, and the election was November 5th. And yet in Pennsylvania, the Senate candidate Bob Casey refuses to concede, and they have openly admitted that they are counting illegal ballots from people who are non-citizens. So if you had the SAVE Act in place, we would not be in this place today.
Well, you need a lot of things in place to make sure we're not in this situation. You not only have the situation playing out at the Senate level in Pennsylvania, we have multiple House races in the state of California where they're still counting votes. Right. This is the problem where states in our country allow ballots to arrive after Election Day. Then you often have a debate about what happens if an individual didn't date their ballot appropriately, if there's not a barcode from the USPS on that ballot. The solution to this is what most states do, states like my home state of Wisconsin or the state of Florida, that simply says your ballot needs to be in by the time the polls are closed. That solves a lot of the problems that we're seeing playing out across the country. We need to do that. We need photo ID. We need to make sure only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. Yep. As we come into unified Republican government control, we have a big opportunity to move forward legislation as it relates to election integrity. As chair on the Committee on House Administration, we're working vigorously right now to make sure that we have that legislation in place so we can move it and have it signed into law by President Trump. I think it needs to be one of our absolute top priorities in the House.
All right. Well, we'll be watching you work on that. Meanwhile, President-elect Trump building out his administration, tapping Trump transition team co-chair and Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick as Commerce Secretary. He'll be partly responsible for overseeing trade and tariffs. Trump also nominating former Wisconsin Congressman and Fox Business host Sean Duffy as Transportation Secretary. The president said Sean will use his experience and the relationships he's built over many years in Congress to maintain and rebuild our nation's infrastructure. Your thoughts on Trump's picks?
I know Howard Lutnick well. I know Sean Duffy well. Let me tell you out of the gates, Sean Duffy is a great pick for the Department of Transportation. The picks across the board here by President Trump are positive. He's moving quickly. He's looking to shake up Washington, D.C. at a period of time where we have to shake up Washington, D.C. so it starts working on behalf of the American people so we can get this country back on track. We're seeing time and again President Trump moving quickly, moving boldly, and ready to shake up Washington, D.C. That's what the voters voted for in November. That's what I'm ready to do. And I'm excited when we're going to be able to hit the ground running on January 20th when President Trump is signed into office.
Yeah, and we'll see how the Senate responds to all of these picks in early January when the 119th Congress begins. The hearings will begin early January. So we've got more to come on that. But, Congressman, you're deploying congressional election observers to Iowa's first district for the official recount. I want to get back to this for a second because Democrat Christina Bohanian asked for a recount last week. She trails Republican incumbent Marionette Miller Meeks by about 800 votes. The AP has still not called this race, which is incredible to me. How crucial is this race for Republicans' majority? Because little by little, you're going lower and lower in terms of the majority here, right? Now you've got a razor-thin margin again.
Yeah, we're seeing trend lines in the wrong direction in California. Michelle Steele is down by a bit. We need to get John Duarte back above the line. And again, we're frustrated with the delay in counting. In Iowa, they're beginning a recount with Marionette Miller Meeks. I've deployed 10 election observers to the state of Iowa from the United States House of Representatives to be our eyes and ears and observers on the ground. This is part of our robust election integrity project from the Committee on House Administration, our commitment to make that only legal votes are counting and that we're following the laws. What we saw 4 years ago with Marionette Miller Meeks' seat, where in that case she won by simply 6 votes. What we saw was Democrats trying to actually kick her out of office. And at the end of the day, through the Committee on House Administration, the work of others like Representative Rodney Davis, we were able to push back against the Democrats and make sure that Marionette Miller Meeks, the duly elected representative from Iowa, won that race. What we're prepared for is all sorts of actions by the Democrats that we saw 4 years ago, is why we're deploying 10 election observers to observe this recount. So we are in a position to defend this seat when Marionette Miller Meeks is ultimately identified as the winner by the state of Iowa.
All right, here's Todd Pyro.
What's your biggest concern, Congressman? What specifically will these observers be looking for in terms of irregularities or, dare I say, illegalities?
They're the eyes and ears on the ground to document what is occurring. I'm of the view that when the cat's away, the mice will play. We're putting in place the cats, the eyes and ears on the ground to make sure that everyone is following the rules. In the event that one of these observers who are professionally trained by our committee would observe anything nefarious, the first thing they do would be call me and the attorneys that we have on staff. We deployed election observers across the country, places like California, Pennsylvania, my home state of Wisconsin. And on Election Day, those men and women played a vital role, making sure that the rules were being followed in every location across the country. These 10 individuals will be on the ground, will be observing the election process, making sure that the rules are followed and making sure that we have documentation of exactly that occurring.
All right. Well, that's certainly something I know you'll be working on in terms of new rules and regulations around voting. But what would you say is your priority in the 119th Congress next year?
Boy, I think election integrity needs to be number one. We have unified Republican control. There's obvious things that we should have in place across the country, such as photo ID. This is an 80-20 issue across the country. You need a photo ID to go buy a six-pack of beer, to board an airplane, to open a bank account. Good grief. You should need a photo ID to vote in the United States of America. We can get ourselves to a spot where we can really enhance election integrity, increase Americans' confidence in our elections. And if we do that, that's to the benefit of the democracy, and in particular to the benefit of all future elections in the United States of America.
Yeah, we've been covering a lot of the retail earnings this morning, and TJX is out with its numbers. They beat expectations on revenue of $14.1 billion and on earnings of $1.14 a share versus an estimate of $1.09. But everybody we speak with, Congress, says the same thing, that consumers are stretched, that the economy is not what it appears from the headlines. What would be the most important sort of trigger or spark to get this economy moving in a real substantial way?
So many people are being impacted by the inflation of the Biden-Harris administration still. We need to do 3 key things to bring inflation down, in my opinion. One, you got to control the reckless spending. I think we're in a position to do that. Two, you need to reduce the burden of regulation that the Biden administration continued to place on Americans and on businesses and on employers. President Trump is ready to go. He has a great series of appointments who are ready to rip that open. And then three, you got to unleash American energy. We need a national energy policy, not only to produce it out of the ground, but to deliver it to where it's needed in the end. If we focus on those three things, we can substantively bring down inflation. Americans will be far better off because the dollars they're earning will go much further and will address the pain that folks are feeling day in and day out.
Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work. Brian Stiles joining us this morning. We'll be right back.
Former Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment, and former Goldman Sachs Vice Chair Bob Hormats. Bob, let's keep.
Unleash American energy. The legendary Don, the 47th, has said he's going to cut electricity bill by 50% in the first year. Now, that better be met because I definitely voted for him based on that one.
Keep in mind that President Biden kept the Trump-era tariffs on China in place for the past 4 years. Yes. That said, we're looking ahead now. Do you see the Trump tariffs as tactical or just paint everything with the same brush?
Well, the point Gary was making, I think, is something we ought to bear in mind. There are specific reasons, and it's in American law as well, that the president has the authority to use tariffs if countries are doing things like dumping in the United States or doing things that adversely affect American security. But the president-elect has been making the point that he is talking about blanket tariffs, 10 to 20% on all countries and maybe even 60% on China. That's a very different animal because that would have an effect on a whole range of American companies, companies that use Chinese parts, companies that source in China to make cars or various other things. And also, if you go into your neighborhood Walmart or Target, it's going to raise the price of all the goods that they import from China and sell to you as a consumer. So for specific purposes, yes. For broad purposes, it's going to be much more damaging to the economy and to the average American.
Sort of the unintended or opposite effect of what the tariffs are supposed to do. Now, the tariffs, Donald Trump has made very clear, would be to help American companies and American farmers. But we have this from the American Soybean and Corn Farmers Association, and they have anticipated, they've crunched the numbers, and they see a huge trade war hit to what they are trying to do to make a living, $7.3 billion in annual production value cost. So how do you get around something like that?
Well, they've raised a very interesting point. The Chinese are not just going to sit there if the United States imposes these huge tariffs and keeps them on there. If they can negotiate, put them on there as a tactic, as a tool, and negotiate some arrangement, that's one thing for a short period of time. If they're on there for a long period of time, the Chinese are going to retaliate. And how would they retaliate? They would retaliate against goods that Americans sell. What do Americans sell? One of the biggest products we sell to China are farm goods. And the farmers have a reason to be concerned about that. But so do a lot of high-tech companies. A lot of high-tech companies sell to China, not for security-related production, but for other reasons.
You've sat across the negotiating table from the Chinese on many levels when you were Undersecretary of State. What's going through their mind right now? I mean, where is the Chinese-U.S. relationship today, and where do you anticipate it will be after the inauguration?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer. I don't think they do, but obviously they are thinking about this. The Chinese don't like uncertainty, and therefore the uncertainty of all this does sort of rattle them a little bit. But they also
thank you for tuning into the live show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up. All
our
you have
ability,
to do
our rise,
to get the
even though we
likes
have
up
economic problems, which they freely admit, our
double
rise
tap your
in the
screen
world
twice.
is going to be enhanced by the fact that Americans are having these big internal fights.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. I thought I paused that.
That the Chinese.
I thought I paused that. Okay, yeah, I just paused it right now. All right, so all you have to do to give this video a like is double tap your screen twice. Like that. And you would have given this video a like. We have like 600 people watching the live show, so Ladies and gentlemen, let's get the likes up. And I just saw someone in the chat. Someone in the chat said, "What is he going to do for U.S. veterans or for us veterans?" Shout out to uh, Daryl Hardy. Daryl Hardy, the 45th actually, gave the U.S. veteran uh, right to try. Right to try for the veterans, and that was a big deal. Let me know if you benefited from that, because a lot of people that I know that were veterans or that are veterans say they benefited from right to try. I mean, the 47th, he's always spoken highly of the military, of the veterans. So, I mean, I have high hopes for the veterans when it comes to Donald Trump.
Chinese are saying to themselves, we want to be the most influential country in the global economy. And if the U.S. starts pulling back or continues to pull back with no trade agreements and barriers, not just against China, but against a wide range of other countries, including allies, it gives the Chinese an edge up in shaping the new global system. We have to be aware of this. It's not a free good.
Okay, but we also can't ignore the Taiwan piece of all of this. Taiwan is home to perhaps one of the most important companies on the planet, and that would be Taiwan Semiconductor. Yes. And why? Because the biggest market cap company in the world, NVIDIA, here in America, makes the AI chips. They design them, but they are fabricated by Taiwan Semi in Taiwan. Do you see any kind of saber rattling that has gotten louder where the Chinese look like they would be making a more sort of tougher move against Taiwan?
They're certainly talking tougher about Taiwan, and they're having their planes circle Taiwan and their Coast Guard ships circle Taiwan with the possibility,
war games, all kinds of
war
stuff.
games, threatening things that don't really adversely affect Taiwan directly, but psychologically they do. And I think what they also understand is the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and I emphasize the word manufacturing company. We don't manufacture a lot of these semiconductors. They do, and they sell them to us, and they sell them to China. So China really has no interest in destroying that company either.
So it's a delicate dance they have to make.
It's a delicate dance with a lot of ambiguities in it, and there are ways the Chinese could put pressure on Taiwan to move closer to China, but I don't think they want to do it with some Hamas kind of event where there's a lot of violence back and forth.
Let me ask you a cost-cutting question, because Donald Trump has said he is putting Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in charge of the Department of Government. He wants to just wipe away a lot of the government spending so that he can then implement his tax cuts that he promised so many different groups. The Pentagon failed its 7th consecutive audit on Friday as the agency was unable to fully account for the more than $824 billion budget. What do you think happens there? Because if you look at what can be cut, it's not that much. There's something like $1.9 trillion after you take out Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, the so-called.
I mean, the Pentagon failing its 7th consecutive audit is just mind-blowing. How is that even possible? And also, I was reading an article that said the Department of Education also failed 3 audits. How is this even a conversation? This is not something that we should even, this is something that shouldn't even exist in the first place. This is the Pentagon, guys. Failing audits for 7 consecutive times. Just imagine like a normal person or a normal businessman who is failing audits for 7 consecutive times. A small business owner who failed 7 consecutive audits. Do you know what's going to happen?
Special untouchable areas.
You're so right, Liz. I think the problem is you cannot simply take a broad brush and cut the budget. Each program
Well,
has
something's
a
got to
purpose.
give, though. This is ridiculous.
And at some point, there are going to be very difficult programs that are important to one constituency or another, or our national security, or older people, or younger people, where they're going to do this. You can't do this with a sledgehammer. You've got to have proficiency and knowledge of the individual programs to decide what the implications are of cutting. In the case of the Pentagon, you've got wars going on in various parts of the world. You want to project the ability of the United States to exercise influence around the world, and you also need strong deterrence, as the president himself has pointed out. So, and you need to give more money for technological advancement through DARPA and other programs. That costs money. So if we start cutting those programs, we damage our national security. We damage a lot of companies that have positions in various parts of this country and elsewhere. So you have to do this in a very careful way. It can't be a sledgehammer.
Surgical. Well, we'll
Surgical.
see. We'll see. I don't know if
And
that's
that requires a delicate
Ramaswamy
hand.
and Elon
Delicate
Musk's
hand.
mandate.
Right.
Bob, great to see you. Thank you
Great to be
very
with
much.
you.
Okay, this story. Welcome back. Lobbyists for the junk food industry reportedly gearing up, lobbying the Senate to try to stop the Senate confirming RFK Jr. as Trump's new HHS secretary. He says they're making America sick. Let's give a warm welcome to internist and cardiologist Dr. Peter McCullough. Doctor, it's great to have you on. What do you make of all this?
Robert F. Kennedy will unify the medical and the dietetics communities on important issues like the dangers of trans fats. These fats directly raise LDL cholesterol. They cause heart attacks and strokes. And while trans fats are out of the fast food supply like McDonald's, they are loaded into a ton of products on the grocery store shelves. Big Food is going to oppose him because it means product reformulation, and that's going to be time-consuming and expensive for the food industry.
Yeah, it's like seed oils are high in polyunsaturated fat. That causes inflammation. You know, Europe warns thousands of additives are poisoning the U.S. food supply. Europe does not let this stuff in. They even put warning labels for that stuff in their food products, doctor. But, you know, the junk food lobbyists are basically saying if RFK Jr. gets in, they're going to try to cut any funding to HHS through Congress's appropriations for what RFK Jr. wants.
You know, we can't let that happen. Just like in biopharmaceuticals, food industry corruption, these lobbyist groups wield too much influence. You know, the last two secretaries, Azar and Becerra, they were silent on this issue. They were slow walking getting trans fats out of the diet. I think RFK is not going to be corrupted, and he's going to improve the health of Americans and make America healthy again.
Doctor, so there's a turnstile, right, between the FDA, big pharma. So the food supply making Americans sick, but then we sell drugs in the back end. Final word.
You know, we don't need to go down this pathway. A paper by Xi and colleagues in JAMA this week points out that half of Americans are eligible for Ozempic-like drugs with obesity and diabetes. We have to turn it around. It will start with diet and healthy choices, fitness, and improving the health of our country.
Make America healthy again. RFK Jr. wants to do that. So does Trump.
Look who's here. Brent Bozell's joining us. On The View, they called, well, look, these two, Mika and Brzezinski, the two of them, they called Trump a threat to democracy. And now they go down there and visit him in Mar-a-Lago. What are they up to, do you think, Brent?
Okay, well, let's look at the numbers first. First, this is the collapse of MSNBC. Since October, their ratings are down 53%. On the Rachel Maddow show, their numbers are down from 2.3 to 1.3 million. They've lost 1 million viewers. MSNBC in November 6th to 13th had 550,000 viewers nationwide. Compare that, by the way, to Fox, which was 2.2 million. Finally, in 2016, the last time Donald Trump ran and won, MSNBC was at 1.3 million, and it was up at 98%. So what's all this telling you? What it's telling you is that Donald Trump is in charge. The attacks that worked against him in 2016 backfired in 2020. The ratings show exactly what the public thinks. The support for the national news media, the trust in the national news media, is at 31%. It's at an all-time low. Now, the people at MSNBC could care less about the collapse of their network. What Joe Scarborough is trying to do is stop the bleeding, because they've got to do that, or that network collapses completely. The way you stop the bleeding is you go to the man who famously has no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, and you try to amend it so that you can go back on the air and you can be talking about him and no longer talking to him about a fascist, etc. So it's a smart move that Joe Scarborough made. It's even a smarter move that Donald Trump is making in welcoming him to Mar-a-Lago.
It's a wonderful thing. Brent Bozell, thanks for joining us as ever. I know we'll see you again real soon.
President-elect Trump rounding out his cabinet as he returns to the White House, and it is fast approaching. Fox News Digital's political correspondent Brooke Singman live in West Palm Beach this morning with more. Brooke.
Good morning, Maria. That's right. President-elect Trump building out his cabinet, and he tapped Trump Transition co-chair and Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick as his Commerce Secretary. Now, Lutnick will be partly responsible for overseeing trade, with Trump promising to impose at least a 60% tariff on all Chinese exports to the U.S. Maria, you spoke to Lutnick on this recently. Watch this.
What's the most important plan that people need to understand about Donald Trump and about his plans for the economy and taxes?
He will drive down the cost of gasoline. He will drive down the cost of energy, and he will drive down corporate taxes, which means they will build factories here, bring back farming, right? Tariffs will protect our farmers. Manufacturing will employ our people, and energy will drive down our costs, as we have oil, we have farmland, and we have incredible people who can do our workforce, and we're just killing them by supporting China and not putting tariffs on. It's got to end, and Donald Trump is the only person talking about these things.
Lutnick was originally in the running for Treasury Secretary. A source told Fox that the search is a free-for-all and a mad dash to find someone pro-tariff. Some are saying that former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh is the front-runner. He's alongside Key Square Group founder and CEO Scott Bessent, co-founder and CEO of Apollo Mark Rowan, and Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty. Trump is also nominating Dr. Mehmet Oz to serve as the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator. Trump says Oz would, quote, cut waste and fraud within our country's most expensive government agency. And Linda McMahon has been chosen as Education Secretary. She served on the Connecticut State Board of Education, and she led the SBA during Trump's first term. Trump has vowed to dismantle the Department of Education and send education back to the states, with McMahon leading the charge. Other Trump nominees will meet with senators on the Hill this week. VP-elect J.D. Vance will escort Pete Hegseth and Matt Gaetz to their meetings. And Trump says he is not reconsidering Gaetz as Attorney General, despite bipartisan backlash over sexual misconduct allegations that Gaetz denies. The House Ethics Panel is meeting today on whether to release the findings of their investigation, despite Gaetz resigning from Congress. Vance also revealing in a now-deleted X post that the Trump team is interviewing candidates to lead the FBI, signaling Christopher Wray could be replaced before the end of his term. Names being floated for his replacement are former Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers and Kash Patel. So it is yet another busy week for President-elect Trump as he builds out his second administration.
Democrats claim President Trump is trying to politicize the civil service, but situations like the one at FEMA validate our concerns that it is already politicized.
FEMA appears to be plagued by poor decision-making and a serious lack of communication.
It's plainly wrong and divisive to use a presidential campaign lawn sign as a proxy for someone's dangerousness.
If that is going to be the protocol for how citizens get help from the emergency management agency, then it needs to be completely revamped.
Good evening. I'm Dagan McDowell.
And I'm David Asman. Welcome to The Bottom Line. Well, FEMA Administrator Dion Criswell facing the wrath of lawmakers after reports that members of the agency were skipping over storm-wrecked houses just because they appeared to be that of Trump supporters.
All the while, residents in Florida and Western North Carolina are still waiting on any assistance from this craptastic agency. Let's send it on over to Fox News senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram, who has more on this hearing from Capitol Hill. Hey, Chad.
Dagan, David, FEMA Administrator Dion Criswell found herself in the hot seat. There's been bipartisan criticism about how the agency responded to the two monster storms, but lawmakers said the magnitude did not matter.
For it to take 3 days for the visibility of FEMA is just not acceptable. There were folks in their homes not only without power, they couldn't flush toilets, they had no drinking water. We were shut off from the rest of the world.
Edwards said FEMA told him 400 pallets of water were delivered to western North Carolina. But when Edwards specifically asked where, FEMA could not give a certain location. Florida Democrat Kathy Castor lamented how long it took to reestablish the basics of everyday life.
It took weeks in some places to get the power turned back on. We've got to be smarter about our electrical systems in this country and build in a more resilient way with microgrids, solar battery systems that can safeguard our critical infrastructure.
President Biden just requested nearly $100 billion to help refill FEMA's coffers and prepare for future disasters. Criswell said the dimension of the storms was staggering.
Because we had paused close to $9 billion in payments through our immediate needs funding for fiscal year 24. The cost to respond to these two disasters is outpacing all other disasters in the previous 10 years except for Hurricane Maria.
Congress must approve the extra money to help hurricane-ravaged areas recover. But some conservatives want to offset that spending by pulling money for programs to help shelter people illegally in the country. David, Dagan?
Chad, thank you very much.
President-elect Trump rounding out his cabinet as he returns to the White House, and it is fast approaching. Fox News Digital's political correspondent Brooke Singman live in West Palm Beach this morning with more. Brooke.
Good morning, Maria. That's right. President-elect Trump building out his cabinet, and he tapped Trump Transition co-chair and Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick as his Commerce Secretary. Now, Lutnick will be partly responsible for overseeing trade, with Trump promising to impose at least a 60% tariff on all Chinese exports to the U.S. Maria, you spoke to Lutnick on this recently. Watch this.
What's the most important plan that people need to understand about Donald Trump and about his plans for the economy and taxes?
He will drive down the cost of gasoline. He will drive down the cost of energy, and he will drive down corporate taxes, which means they will build factories here, bring back farming, right? Tariffs will protect our farmers. Manufacturing will employ our people, and energy will drive down our costs as we have oil. We have farmland, and we have incredible people who can do our workforce, and we're just killing them by supporting China and not putting tariffs on. It's got to end, and Donald Trump is the only person talking about these things.
Lutnick was originally in the running for Treasury Secretary. A source told Fox that the search is a free-for-all and a mad dash to find someone pro-tariff. Some are saying that former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh is the front-runner. He's alongside Key Square Group founder and CEO Scott Bessent, co-founder and CEO of Apollo, Mark Rowan, and Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty. Trump also nominating Dr. Mehmet Oz to serve as the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator. Trump says Oz would, quote, cut waste and fraud within our country's most expensive government agency. And Linda McMahon has been chosen as Education Secretary. She served on the Connecticut State Board of Education, and she led the SBA during Trump's first term. Trump has vowed to dismantle the Department of Education and send education back to the states, with McMahon leading the charge. Other Trump nominees will meet with senators on the Hill this week. VP-elect J.D. Vance will escort Pete Hegseth and Matt Gaetz to their meetings. And Trump says he is not reconsidering Gaetz as Attorney General, despite bipartisan backlash over sexual misconduct allegations that Gaetz denies. The House Ethics Panel is meeting today on whether to release the findings of their investigation, despite Gaetz resigning from Congress. Vance also revealing in a now-deleted X post that the Trump team is interviewing candidates to lead the FBI, signaling Christopher Wray could be replaced before the end of his term. Names being floated for his replacement are former Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers and Kash Patel. So it is yet another busy week for President-elect Trump as he builds out his second administration. Maria?
Sure is, Brooke. Thanks very much.
Faulkner, co-host of Outnumbered and host of the Faulkner Focus on Fox News. Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief, National Review. Miranda Devine, ace New York Post columnist and also a Fox News contributor. Harris, I like the way you were boogieing there, so I'm going to lead off with you. Come on, we're together, one.
You do really? Now we're going to be a meme.
All right. But in all seriousness, now, this may not last. And we've seen presidential honeymoons before. I get all that. I don't think I've seen one this long, however, this intense. And I didn't see NFL players dancing your dance in the end zone. But it is interesting to me that I sense the country wants him to succeed.
Look, I don't think that Democrats were wrong when they first tried to run Kamala Harris, and she had a decidedly very long honeymoon period too. It just didn't hang on when they first put her in over Joe Biden. But they weren't wrong that the country could use a little joy and uplift. Many people struggling just to get the groceries on the table and still being told that they're imagining their journey. So they weren't wrong about that. They just couldn't sustain it because the facts were against them. And, you know, so right now, I think that there is a sort of collective, okay, we've decided as a nation who the next president's going to be. We don't have to wait in limbo unless you're in like some state, Senate, and House races, what they still haven't called. That's a story for another hour. But you don't have to worry about that with the president. So now the joy can begin of what's next. When will the change come? And you see him like with whip-neck speed trying to get his cabinet picks in place and all of that. So he's moving forward to prove that he can get that done. He's also being true to who he is. It's the authenticity along the way. Of course he's going to go to the UFC championships at MSG. Of course he's going to take that victory lap. And there are going to be people there that might not have ever said they wanted to vote for him that did. And many of those people look like me. Many are Hispanic, Asian, as you mentioned.
And he
just to see you bust a move, right?
He doesn't use his lower bottle, but he's got a nice
he does. Have you seen the golf swing?
That's
That takes your feet because you got to end in the ice cream cone. I don't play golf, but I've been told that that's how it is. So just this last point. With putting the cabinet together and hearing the push against him potentially on the Hill with lawmakers, and then hearing these blue-led state Democrat governors saying they're going to defy the people's choice and push against everything he does in their interest, it's rich. And if they think they're going to win back voters that way, they're wrong. But the joy will reside on the right side of the aisle until the left decides to smile and move on.
Yeah, Miranda, that's an interesting point. The last thing that Harris, because I mean, I watched Phil Murphy, governor of New Jersey. I know Phil Murphy. He's a very nice man. I think he's lost his mind on this, but he's one of them. Kathy Hochul here in New York. Gavin Newsom, I'm not so surprised. I know him rather well, too, but that's a whole different story. But if they're going to stand in the way deliberately right at the outset, they're going to create so much ill will for themselves. The Republicans might wind up taking their states or even doing even better than they did in the last election, turning blue into red. I mean, it's folly for them to go after red. The guy hasn't even started yet, and the country seems to be behind him. How dumb are they?
It's really dumb because how well did that tactic work, Trump derangement syndrome, when Nancy Pelosi was running it? And, you know, they've now lost coast to coast. Even Nancy Pelosi's hometown of San Francisco swung to Trump by 7 points. You know, they've lost the House, they've lost the Senate, they've lost the Electoral College and the popular vote. Trump derangement, everybody saw through it. You've even got Morning Joe and Mika making the humiliating parade down to Mar-a-Lago to try and, you know, change sides. It doesn't work. It's been a disaster. So I don't know what these governors are doing, thinking that they can mount a resistance. Obviously, they're going to oppose some of the policies, but give the guy a chance, because calling him Hitler and demonising him, trying to employ lawfare against him, impeaching him, and then trying to assassinate him, it just made him stronger.
Rich Lowry, I just saw FNC Digital posting a story. Trump's 76 million plus, I think 76.4 million. That is the most votes any Republican president has ever received. He's still ahead in the popular vote by a couple of million. Of course, he's ahead in the Electoral College by a lot more than that. How do you read this? I mean, again, as I'll say, we've seen honeymoons before. Now, it may be, you know, his own personality, which is very ebullient, easy to follow. But I don't see it quite like this. I don't see anything quite like this that I can remember, even going way, way back to Reagan. Yes, you get a couple days and then things settle down and then you get into the transition. He's done everything at once with a loud bang and getting a massive following. What do you make
So
of it?
first of all, let me thank you personally for not asking me to boogie on air. I really appreciate it, Larry. But let's pause on that Madison Square Garden moment.
Yeah.
Because if you said there's going to be a Republican politician going to UFC championship and he's going to get huge applause. Rudy Giuliani, maybe after September 11th. Otherwise, no, it's not going to happen. So it just goes to new audiences this guy has tapped into. And I think a huge part of what happened is there are a lot of voters probably in that garden and at MSG who are like, I'm a kind of a moderate, I don't care about politics that much. But the left went so far, the Financial Times had a great piece about this, the Democrats went so far left, the center moved left. So you're a moderate, but now you're right of center, right? So now you're actually, I'm considering this guy because he's normal compared to the other people. And he actually made gains among moderates and made gains, as Miranda was alluding to, in a lot of blue areas because people are so disaffected with the disastrous misgovernance in our cities.
The front page, front of the Wall Street Journal website right now is running a story how the biggest mistake the Democrats made was ignoring the inflation problem, both, before, during, and after. But I want to ask you, Harris, cultural issues, I think, played a quieter but absolute key role in this election. Now, to some extent, it was all about biological men playing in women's sports. That was probably the tip of the iceberg. But people saw, heard things, didn't like the woke, didn't like the DEI affirmative action, didn't like the cancel culture. When I think about Madison Square Garden, I think about those young kids in there. Most of them are fairly young and probably under 35 or 40. I don't think they liked any of that stuff one bit.
So what you're talking about is the iceberg that's above the ocean, the part that you don't see, the bigger part of the iceberg that's holding the other part up. Really, there were just issues of race, culture, ethnicity that were played on the left in very dangerous ways by playing us against each other, by telling black men you don't support black women because you're misogynistic. You aren't voting for Kamala because you just don't know what you're doing. You're not really thinking straight. You're not really loving them, so on and so forth. And that came from a former president, Barack Obama. It wasn't like they were being mansplained by somebody they didn't know, but practically arms akimbo, he's telling them how to be black. It was a flashback to a time when Joe Biden said if you didn't vote for him and you were black, you weren't really black. You don't get to lecture cultures from a high place paying Beyonce and Oprah. Now we know she made not 1 million, but 2.5, Oprah, for showing up.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that happened today.
She really needed the money. Sorry.
Well, I don't know. I'm not really into her finances, but, did Lizzo need millions? I'm not really sure. But anyway, women got paid, performers got paid to be on stage and not to sing. But just to support publicly Kamala Harris. And my point with that is she had a real disconnect with Hispanics and blacks in this country.
Right.
And Asians and other cultures and ethnicities and races saw that too and said, well, our bottom line isn't doing well either.
Yeah.
Like I interviewed all voters from every ilk, every age group, and they said, look, Harris, you're right, the color is green. The atmosphere has to be American dream driven, and this one isn't by Kamala Harris. She keeps laughing and she keeps smiling, and then she got serious toward the end and started calling people fascists and her vice presidential partner Tim Walz. Everybody at MSG for Trump is a Nazi and all this kind of stuff. So they're dividing. And then black people got really quiet. Where was James Clyburn until a couple of days ago when he was upset? What was going on?
Another submerged iceberg, though, was the opposition to this woke stuff. Most people, it happens in their workplace or, at a hospital or a medical office where these whispered conversations, this stuff is crazy. You're not a birthing parent, you're a mother. That training was insane, but I don't want anyone to know I think it's insane. This was a way for people to make their dissent from all that audible. They could go in the voting booth in secret and make their views known by voting for a big middle finger to all that stuff in the form of Donald Trump.
I think he knew this. I mean, his closing ads had quite a bit of the cultural issue in them.
That brilliant line where he said, she's for they, them.
That's right.
Trump's for you.
That's right. And taxpayers paying for various transgender operations. Choices, people are going to make choices. Personal choices, that's up to them. taxpayers paying for it, or in taxpayers in prison paying for it, or the military. We're going to talk about the military later in the show. I just think there was just like a silent majority that was furious at this kind of stuff. We talked about this at Outnumbered the Sunday before the Tuesday election. It came up again and again. And I think a lot of people missed it. I think a lot of pollsters missed it as well. Miranda, can I jump to something maybe less euphoric, but very important? There's two issues here. One of them is the Pete Hegseth story in the Pentagon, and the other one's going to be the Matt Gaetz story in the Justice Department. But you wrote on the Pete Hegseth story, and what is it that they're going to do here? They have witnesses who are not good witnesses, not credible witnesses. What is it that they're worried about with Pete Hegseth?
Well, I don't think Trump is worried about him. I think Trump is going ahead with him. This is just the usual smear that every single member of this administration is going to suffer. And we've seen that Trump and his people are Teflon. They've thrown every smear possible at Trump. They've called him a rapist, a Nazi, you name it. And he won a landslide. So it doesn't work. I think people see it for what it is. Pete Hegseth is a danger to the blob, to the sort of military-industrial complex, because he's a real soldier and he's totally against the woke DEI, the endless wars, the pointless, military spending. And I mean, Matt Gaetz is the same thing. They're both kind of middle fingers by Trump to the deep state. It's telling them it's not going to be business as usual anymore. I'm not going to be Mr. Nice Guy like I was the first time.
One mistake that Trump made the first time around, generals are impressive, right? They tend to be good at one thing, right? Military affairs. Doesn't mean they're going to be good at politics. Doesn't mean they're going to have any political courage. Doesn't mean they're going to have original, good views, right? So now he's like, forget the generals. I'm going a layer below to a war fighter. And Pete's views on this, that the role of the military is to go out and break things and kill people, and you're not going to poison it with this idiotic DEI ideology, is extremely important.
What did you think about this? What is DEI? Is a form of I think of it as affirmative action on steroids. And I think people were I think the original affirmative action became very unpopular. Lawsuits at Harvard and University of North Carolina and places like that. Anti-Semitism is very unpopular. Somehow Democrats...
Anti-Semitism is wrong.
Of course it's deadly wrong.
So it's not just unpopular.
It's morally wrong and it's unpopular. But I'm just saying Democrats wound up lining up behind all of these things. They never really lifted a finger on anti-Semitism. They never really they defended woke to the bitter end. How could they be so stupid? There's no common sense here. Well, ordinary working folks, ordinary middle-class folks, how could they be so stupid?
Well, the goal is to control. So I had a guest on the Faulkner Focus recently who said DEI didn't earn it. And the problem with that is that when you give, and I don't even know how constitutionally fair this is, but when, we are looking at things very much decades post-civil rights and other movements in this country, but particularly that one that had to do with affirmative action and other movements to try to right-size salaries and opportunity and all of that. But when you get into the land of merit, and where everybody's got to be looked upon now for what they can bring to the table, what people really want is a leg up. There are a lot of ways to help people without putting them into a category that has an acronym. Like that, there are a lot of ways to make sure that, well, maybe we give women some help with some daycare situation. That was a question at the town hall, the all-women town hall that I did with now President-elect Trump. There are a lot of things. Again, stop putting us in these categories. And diversity, part of the problem is diversity isn't just your skin color and your hair texture.
Correct.
I was raised military. I'm one lane. There are all sorts of things that make us diverse in a multiple type of situation on the job. We can't have everybody coming from the same sort of ilk. And that's diversity, but that's not really what we're saying. If I could just say one quick thing with regard to the nominees that the president is putting forth. You mentioned Pete Hegseth. I would say about that this nation actually watched a White House put up with the behavior of the current SecDef disappearing for days after a surgery that he did not disclose, and the White House didn't even know he was gone. So I think the bar is someplace where I can't see.
We'll know where he is, right?
Maybe
He's gonna
it's
show up to work.
invisible, the
No,
sudden crisis of merit and concern. Pete Hegseth is a two-time Bronze Star winner in the military. Look, they're going to vet and depose everybody, I would think, right? Isn't that kind of how they're going to do it? Now, I don't know if they're going to use the FBI to do that. Trump has said he's had too much recent experience with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, so he might not want to. But when you come to these nominees, what are you saying? You talked about the middle finger. That's a middle finger to the public who just voted for Trump. Do they really want to tick off voters that badly?
Can I read you Ruffini on this? He's a very smart guy. One of the authors of the new Republican Working Class Coalition has been writing about it for years in this piece today. Mr. Trump's new coalition members embrace a politics of aspiration and not a leftward shift towards dependency on government. And then here it is, growing up, they were told by their parents to support the Democratic Party. These are minority groups. Support the Democratic Party because it was the party of the poor. Their response, we don't have to be poor.
Yeah, there you go. So the offer,
it's not so much race. Yes, always there. I get that. Religion, always there. Ethnicity, always there. How about the economy? How about growth? See, Trump's playing to that. They remembered middle and lower income working folks remembered their take-home pay under Trump the first time.
Yeah, the implicit offer.
Pretty damn good.
The implicit offer to Hispanics that was implicitly rejected this year's from Democrats, you can be an oppressed minority too. Wouldn't it be great to be an oppressed minority, a victim group? You can be a victim group. And they're like, no, we want to be Americans and succeed like everyone else. A lot of polling showed that Hispanic voters cared more about the economy than white voters, right? So they don't like this ethnic pandering.
I love this. Their response, we don't have to be poor. I just love that.
Kamala proved that, right?
Thing.
The only group she gained in over Biden and again Trump was people earning more than $100,000 a year. I mean, I think that Trump hit on something when he started to say, I'm going to cut taxes on Social Security. He's going on both ends of the spectrum.
And tips.
That's a tight budget
tax
when
on
you
tips.
retire.
Overtime. Overtime.
Yeah.
So these are wage workers who aren't quite earning the wage that keeps up with now an inflation that's going back up, by the way, right?
Fox hosts overtime.
Right.
No taxes. No taxes.
No, but Friday, didn't the inflation rate tick back up again?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so I mean, Biden's
Next
going
segment,
out
we're gonna
on
talk about
some bad news.
No, that's correct. I think that's right.
Thank you for tuning into the live stream. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Shout out to everybody watching the live show. Zyros, Dice, D-Rock, El Patron, First, Tyron, Ama, M.A. Magazine. Man, everybody, God bless you so much. You guys are the best. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up. What is going on with Didi? What is going on with Didi? Most people say his name is Didi the Diddler, but what is going on with Didi? I mean, what is going on with Didi right now?
Sean Diddy Combs is back in a New York courtroom, marking a third attempt to be released on bail in his sex trafficking case. He's been in jail since his arrest in September, and today's hearing is happening as Combs' lawyers are accusing prosecutors of manipulating a disturbing video, one that you've probably seen. It's the one that shows him brutally attacking his then girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hotel hallway back in 2016. CNN's Elizabeth Wagmeister is live in Los Angeles. Elizabeth, does the Combs team have a strong case here to make, especially in light of these recent allegations that he's been making calls from behind bars that could be seen to influence maybe witnesses?
Look, Brianna, so Combs' team says that those allegations about those phone calls and tampering with witnesses from behind bars, they say that that is not true. They are denying all of that. There have been filings flying left and right. Today, we've had 2 new filings. Last night, there was an additional filing where they spoke about that video that you just referenced, Brianna. So Combs' team, they are working very hard to try to get him released. As you said, this is going to be his third bail hearing. We'll see if third time's a charm. But right now, what we see here is some screenshots from that disturbing video that our team broke here at CNN. Now, what Combs' team is saying in this filing is that prosecutors, they claim that they submitted a version of that video that our team released. Now, we have not seen that alleged video that prosecutors submitted to the court for these bail proceedings. We don't know what was in them, but Combs' team is saying it's edited, that they left out some of the material, that it's out of order, and they are taking issue with that. Now, I want to read you part of what Combs' team said in that filing, Brianna. They say, quote, "The video is not evidence of a coerced freak-off and sex trafficking, but rather a sad glimpse into a decade-long consensual relationship between Mr. Combs and Ventura." So they are categorizing this as a sad moment within a consensual relationship. I think what you saw, Brianna, what I saw, what the world has seen now, is that video depicts a horrific violent attack against a woman. Now, we do not know what happened behind closed doors. The footage that we have seen occurs in the hallway of that hotel room. But what happens in the hallway of that hotel room, according to the footage that our team obtained and released earlier this year, again, is Combs dragging Ventura, kicking her, throwing a vase towards her, a glass vase towards her. So we will see what the judge has to say. But right now, Combs in a courtroom, the third attempt to get out before his criminal trial. Remember, Brianna, his criminal trial is set for the spring of next year, and he has been denied bail twice. He is trying to get out as he awaits that trial.
Yeah, that may be a tough sell, but we'll see what the judge says. Elizabeth, thank you so much for the report. Boris?
Let's discuss some of the details with Joey Jackson. He's a CNN legal analyst, a former prosecutor as well. Joey, thanks so much for being with us. This is Sean Combs' third try to get out on bail. Do you think he has a better chance this time around?
So he may, Boris. Good to be with you. And here's why. You heard Elizabeth reference the issue of the recording, and here's why it's significant in terms of its manipulation. Just to reset, the critical to his denial on bail were really two factors. The one factor related to him being a danger to the community. The other factor being how he would potentially obstruct witnesses. Now, critical in the prosecutor's arguments at those previous hearings was the fact that there's this tape that everyone has seen, and they said, prosecutors did, that tape was in the context of a freak-off. It was in the context of sex trafficking. It was in the context of him being violent as it related to that count in the indictment against Miss Ventura, right, who's referred to as victim one. But here now comes the defense saying, hey, by the way, the prosecution has misled you, court. This had nothing to do with a freak-off, as is alleged, which were the parties that he was allegedly having, that is P. Diddy, with all of these instances going on with coerced sexual activity, etc., had nothing to do with that. It also had nothing to do with sex trafficking. This was a domestic dispute. Now, it doesn't make the violence in the tape, Boris, any more tenable, right? Violence is violence. It shouldn't have happened, but it gives it context. Now, when you get down to the manipulation of the tape, the reordering of the tape, did you mislead the court? If they did, that's a factual question. A judge won't be too happy. Second brief point, and that is they're also arguing, the defense team, that there's the issue concerning his ability to prepare and be ready for trial. If you're going through and rummaging through his notes and other records that are attorney-client privileged and peeping at them and looking at them and using them against them, how could he prepare for trial? So those, we know that there was a raid of the cell and there were certain notes that were used that the prosecution now has. Defense team saying, no, we need to be able to prepare him. So those are the two critical arguments that they're making. We'll see whether they carry the day. But to your question, I think this new material certainly gives and may give the judge pause this time in terms of saying, maybe it is that I should grant him some bail package that is reasonable or not.
Joey, about those personal notes, the prosecution has argued that this was a previously scheduled search. I'm wondering how a judge goes about determining where to land on whether these notes are actually admissible, and do you expect that the phone calls that he's apparently made, allegedly made, to be significant? These like three-way calls to try to convince witnesses to do one thing or another.
So, Boris, everything has a context, right? And so when you evaluate the context, let's look at the notes. Yes, it could have been a pre-planned search, and it's important to search in jails. Safety and security is preeminent. You want to ensure that. But when you get notes and other materials that could be subject to attorney-client relationship, there should be a filter team. That is a team of prosecutors who have experience to go over those records to determine whether or not they could be usable. Now, those prosecutors generally are unrelated to the case. They'll look through it and they'll parse out the material. And if it could be given over to the other side who's on the case, they'll do that. Defense team says they failed, that is the filter team, in that regard, because those notes should have never been given and used in this case. That's number one. That's troubling, and there should be a hearing as it relates to that. And so we'll see where the judge lands on that issue, moving forward with regard to whether or not. I think the notes are certainly not going to be admissible, but I don't think the judge is going to be very pleased in terms of you using that against them. And it furthers the defense's narrative that, hey, you know what, we need him out here, right, so that he could prepare with us, not inside where they're peeping and looking at his records and documents.
Joey Jackson, always great to get your perspective. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Boris.
Gates' decision to drop out from campaigning for the Attorney General role is now resounding around Capitol Hill.
Certainly is, and that is where we find CNN congressional correspondent Lauren Fox. Lauren, tell us about that reaction from lawmakers.
Yeah, there's a real sense of relief up here in the United States Senate, and that in part is because a lot of lawmakers were staring down what was going to be a very difficult 2 months to even get to the confirmation hearing for Matt Gaetz in the Senate Judiciary Committee. There was a lot of concern that more and more might come out about what witnesses told Ethics Committee members behind closed doors. And I think that fear and apprehension about what they might learn, how that might affect the nomination, what they might be asked about in the halls, that was really weighing on some lawmakers as they were trying to think through how they were going to move forward over the next several weeks. One thing to keep in mind is there were a number of Republicans who never said what they thought about Matt Gaetz, other than some of them who were very surprised that he was nominated in the first place. One of those people who called him unserious, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, actually told me that she thought that this was a sound decision by Matt Gaetz, that this was something that was the right decision moving forward for the body. But, there was a lot of reaction where folks just didn't get a heads up. We talked to John Thune, who is a Republican leader, he's the incoming Republican leader, who told us that he did not get any sense that this was coming. So a huge surprise on Capitol Hill. I'll note that Gaetz did have a series of meetings yesterday with Senate Judiciary Committee members, and it was really interesting because after those meetings, Senator John Cornyn made the point to reporters that behind closed doors, he had impressed upon Gaetz what was at stake here. He also made clear that there are no secrets when it comes to this vetting process and that everything was going to come out.
Really interesting. And now with Gaetz out, Lauren, there is a spotlight on Pete Hegseth, who is Trump's DOD pick. He's facing this allegation of sexual assault himself from 2017. And he was up on the Hill today meeting with folks that he needs to win over. What's the reaction been like to him?
Yeah, as reporters are asking about Gaetz, they are in the same breath then turning to Pete Hegseth and whether or not Republicans believe that he has the votes. Will he be able to actually get confirmed? And it was really interesting because the talking point that you kept hearing over and over again today on Hegseth was that this process is going to play out, that all nominees have to go through the vetting process. And I think that is a telling sign because you don't hear a ton of Republican members just coming out saying that they are certainly and definitely going to support Pete Hegseth because, again, there's that apprehension about what do members know, what don't they know at this point. And we should just point out that committee hearings and that vetting process, it happens in a very public way. There's also questions that these nominees have to answer for senators and respond over the course of several weeks. This is not an easy process. And I think that the gravity of that is really starting to set in on Capitol Hill for not just these nominees, but also the Republican senators who have this work ahead. Brianna?
Lauren Fox, live from Capitol Hill. Thank you so much. Let's discuss with legendary journalist Bob Woodward. He's an associate editor at the Washington Post and the author of the new book, War. Bob, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
You've written a lot about Donald Trump over the years, and I want to ask you about his transition so far. Specifically, the idea that some of these allegations about Gaetz had already been out there Folks were familiar with some of the allegations. And on top of that, Gates hadn't cultivated a very popular relationship. He wasn't Mr. Congeniality up on Capitol Hill. Why did the Trump team move forward with nominating him as Attorney General, do you think, with all that baggage?
Well, Trump likes to do it his way, as we know. I remember interviewing him 35 years ago, Trump, when he was a real estate operator in New York, and he talked about his own rules. And his first rule really is never fold, never give in. And he's liable to look at this as an opportunity to put his foot on the gas a little harder to do the unorthodox and never fold, because he's going to look at this as, Gates was pressured, the whole environment is uncomfortable. Well, no one likes uncomfortable environments to operate in more than Donald Trump.
It's a very good point. And you've covered him for so long, but you've taken such a detailed look at his past administration. And I wonder how you think these picks, just more broadly, compare to the folks he chose to have in his cabinet the first time.
Yes, I mean, he's overreaching. He dangerously for him and for the country. People are clearly unqualified, people who don't have management experience, Justice Department, Defense Department, they are giant management problems. And you can't just walk in off the street and say, run this place. So there will be more spectacle probably from Trump, and who's he going to put in the place of this first effort? He could go low, lower, high, medium, probably not too high. I think he's not going to put somebody in there who is a Democrat who has lots of legal experience. But we get to
We'll see.
watch. Yes, exactly.
Do you think there's a cohesive strategy behind these picks? I asked you because some president-elects go in thinking they want to create a team of rivals. Trump, the last time around, was seeking advice from outside people. He had unorthodox choices during his first administration. Some of them seem to pan out. Is there a strategy here?
A cohesive strategy from Donald Trump in doing 3 books on him and lots of reporting. No, that's not the way he operates. He wants to do it his way. So if he can find a way to put his finger in the eye of the establishment again, I think he's likely to do it.
I wonder what you think as we've been watching the Biden administration grant Ukraine the ability to use some of these American-made weapons in new and significant ways. Because in your book, War, you revealed, and it made a lot of news, details about how then President Trump had private conversations with Putin about a secret shipment of COVID-19 testing equipment that Trump sent to Putin, kind of doing him a big favor. And you also had reported that there have been maybe as many as 7 calls between Trump and Putin since Trump left the White House in 2021. Trump has denied those reports. You have less of a credibility. I would say he has a credibility issue. You don't. I'm going to take your word for it, Bob. How do you see this relationship coming in as Trump has a decision to make about how the U.S. should support the war?
Something to watch. The Trump-Putin relationship is at the top of the list of mysteries and uncertainties. Trump just recently, when asked about if he's talked to Putin, he's refused to comment. And then he said, if I did, it would be smart. Mystery not solved.
Bob, I'm curious about something that you have a unique perspective on, because you quite literally changed the relationship between journalists and presidential administrations. You're being modest about it, but
I'm being realistic.
Richard Nixon's career as president may differ with you in that opinion. I do wonder, given that you were a target of the plumbers, trying to figure out who was leaking stuff to the Washington Post at the time, what you anticipate the relationship between Trump and the press will look like now, given that he feels empowered going into a second administration and that he's made all these threats about retribution, about revoking broadcast licenses, etc.
Stay tuned. You can never tell. But as I say, Trump loves giving his middle finger to the American people, and that's part of the practice. Whether it's a thought-out strategy, don't know, but next pick will be interesting, and that's part of Trump's approach and strategy, to cause everyone to guess and wonder and talk like, oh, what is he going to do now? What's the flavor of the month? And we don't know. He knows he gets to decide, and so we will have more Trump stories in discussion.
That we can be sure of. We look forward to you telling them. Bob Woodward, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Yes, y'all. First video we saw before this one was Dee Dee's video, and I mean, he might just go out on bail because there's so many situations surrounding his issue right now. Like, he may literally just go out on bail until spring next year, or maybe not. Who knows? Another thing is, for Trump speak, everybody's just trying to have something to say, especially people on the left. They always have something to say when it comes to Trump. However, it's like, he was given a mandate. Let him do what he has to do. And ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up. I was trying to get my daughter ready for her grandma, because her grandma's coming to pick her up right now to go see mommy. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. Yeah, let's see what time it is over here.
Judge ruling Brian Kohlberger, the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students in 2022, can face the death penalty.
Chanley Painter joins us with the details. Chan.
Hey, good morning, Todd and Carly. So the death penalty remains on the table despite the defense throwing nearly every legal argument imaginable at the judge in hopes of sparing their client from the possibility, if he is convicted, of being the monster prosecutors say murdered 4 University of Idaho college students with a K-bar knife 2 years ago. In filings, the defense claimed, among many other things, that the death penalty goes against contemporary standards of decency. But the judge pointed to the fact that both the Idaho and the U.S. Supreme Courts say the death penalty is constitutional. Well, the family of Kayla Gonsalves reacted on Facebook with this, quote, "We finally have a judge who appears prepared, thoughtful, and well-versed in the legal process. There is a newfound level of seriousness that has been absent for far too long. Justice is moving forward, and we pray that one day in the not-so-distant future it will be served." And this decision comes as the defense also filed a 160-page motion this week to suppress much of the evidence in the case, including the defendant's own DNA allegedly found at that scene, guys.
Pope Francis will soon canonize the Catholic Church's first millennial saint. The honor will go to Carlo Acutis, a late London-born teenager who's been called God's influencer. Our chief religion correspondent Lauren Green has got more. Lauren?
Hey, John. Well, you know, from the time Carlo Acutis was a child, he possessed an extraordinary faith, even though his parents weren't very religious. But Acutis brought his family to a deeper faith. Acutis died of leukemia in 2006 at just 15 years old. He was a child of a digital age, teaching himself computer coding. And his devotion to Jesus compelled him to start a website to document Eucharistic miracles around the world. His mother told me that Carlo was exceptional and had a faith-filled wisdom beyond his years.
Carlo used to say that death, we don't have to be scared about death. Death is the passage to the true life. Life, we are like caterpillar, we have to become butterfly. When we die, we are like butterfly. The only thing we have to be afraid is sin, not other things.
In 2020, the Vatican confirmed a miracle attributed to Acutis. A young Brazilian boy was healed from a pancreatic illness after his mother prayed to Acutis. Last year, a second miracle confirmed a young woman was healed from a brain injury from a bike accident after her mother prayed to Acutis in Assisi, Italy, where his body lay. And I spoke with Bishop Robert Barron, who said his canonization will hopefully inspire more faith among young people.
I think the church, in holding Acutis up, is trying to draw those people back. It's the most pressing issue in my mind in the church today, the disaffiliation of the young.
The lives and legacies of saints being highlighted in a new Martin Scorsese docuseries, The Saints, on Fox Nation. It's streaming now. You want to check it out. This week's episode is on John the Baptist. And by the way, Pope Francis announced Acutis will be made a saint in April.
Now, a dozen women volleyball players are suing San Jose State University and the Mountain West Conference. It's all over an alleged biological male allowed to compete on the team. They say their Title IX and First Amendment rights are being violated because that person is on their team. One of the women listed in the lawsuit, co-captain Brooke Slusser, was here on The Focus with me not too long ago.
These girls, and me, myself included, we come to college just with that dream of playing collegiate sports and pursuing that dream we've had since we were just little girls. And the difference being here is that we've had to put up with so much more. The end goal is to just never let any other young lady or girl have to go through this in sports ever again. No one should have to go through this.
So imagine that. You've got this player on your team, and now other teams don't want to play San Jose State University because of that. So it's not just the young women on the team who see this, transgender athlete, but other players don't want to play with them. So 5 schools so far have forfeited games against San Jose State University this season. 24 states signed on to a new brief urging the U.S. Supreme Court to take on the entire matter of transgender athletes, biological males, in women's sports. Their legal brief argues serious concerns for women and girls' safety and fairness. Now, San Jose State University's team associate head coach, Melissa Beatty-Smoot, is with me. And Melissa, you were just suspended after filing a complaint about this very same player in question. Thank you for joining me in Focus. First of all, why did you file a complaint?
I just couldn't take any more after Brooke Slusser came out and was speaking out for her rights, and that they continued to treat the young women on the team and myself poorly for having our thoughts and opinions, and they were told to us, like, we can't have those.
So, we say suspected biological male, we say alleged, all of that. What are the rules and the laws around you being able to say this is a guy on a girl's team? Because I have to imagine, Brooke shared with me, she couldn't even really say the truth in a room. So what are the rules and the laws like for you as a coach?
We're definitely not allowed to speak on that. I'm continued to be told that, the suspension would go to being fired if I speak out. So continuing to hold that silence over myself and the remainder of the women on the team.
Wow. But you are speaking. You're risking everything. So this is important to you.
Very, very.
Tell me about your personal journey. I was reading about you. You've been in NCAA college sports for a long time. You're a storied coach. You've taught a lot of different, you've coached a lot of different places. You've seen so much victory in your days. So what does this mean? At this point in your career, to be dealing with this issue, and how do you help resolve it for the girls that you lead?
Yes, at this point, this just to me, it's like common sense. There should not be biological men playing in women's sports, but we are here right now. And I do think this, is an opportunity for me. It's nothing that we all sign up for, but I definitely feel so strong that, that moving forward with this and helping this fight and making sure we save women's sports for the future of young women, my nieces, my grandchildren, is very important.
Melissa, how surprised were you that other teams didn't want to play San Jose State University? And full disclosure, I went to high school in San Jose, so I know that area and that school really well. We had graduating seniors that went on to play at sports at San Jose State University from Independence High in San Jose State. I mean, I can't even imagine schools not wanting to play you, but 5 of them said no.
Right. Yes, so proud of those young women to stand up for what they believe in when they're also being silenced by the Mountain West, and they're holding, their scholarships and things over their head. I think that is amazing. That's what we need. We need everybody to stand up and make sure that this does not continue.
Wait a minute. I have to cut in. They're keeping young women from having scholarships if they talk about this. Isn't that a First Amendment right? I mean, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more legal attraction to the journey that you're on right now. I mean, they can't take away their scholarships because they don't want to play with someone they suspect is a biological male.
That's what they're holding over their heads. And that's why a lot of the teammates on the San Jose State team is afraid to come forward. They're afraid to lose their playing time. They're afraid to lose their scholarship.
And with this, and I know you have to be careful about what you say, but with this biological male alleged player on your team, I'm not even really sure how to talk about these.
I mean, who takes away scholarships just because people are saying what they believe? That's like a violation of freedom of speech. What is going on here, people? Jeez. Man, double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel, man.
People anymore because transgender, I mean, we have so many titles about them and people get sued and fired if they don't get their titles right. But what's it like to coach that individual? Because that individual's on your team.
Yes, I mean, I guess that's an area that is a really tough area for me to speak on right now.
Okay.
I would like to stay off that.
Okay. But that individual's still on the team.
Yes, very difficult and very difficult for these young women to be there in that space. And they're just so courageous and strong young women to have to face this when they didn't choose this.
Are you surprised that there are 24 states now that are wanting something at the level of a U.S. Supreme Court involvement? That's my last question to you, because this is not a singular journey in California or any one state. It's half the country.
Yes, and we need the whole country, but I'm just so grateful that that's happening right now. Right. And hopefully it will be.
Melissa, thank you. Thank you. And keep us apprised of the suspension situation that you have for standing up. And I hope you continue to coach.
So with that, we bring in Republican Texas Land Commissioner John Buckingham, who has offered 1,400 acres of Texas land for, quote, deportation facilities. Commissioner, great to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be on with you. Thanks for having me on.
So I spoke with Mr. Homan about this, and he said we absolutely need this kind of space, even for temporary holding of people who are going to be the criminal deportees, because they have to make negotiations with the countries where they're going and they need to be processed. Give us a sense of how many people you think are going to be in this facility. How long is it going to take to erect it?
Well, we're here to be a good partner with the Trump administration for the safety and security of our communities. And we just want to enforce to everybody that the first tranche are literally violent criminals who have been hurting our daughters and sons. A lot of them have been in jails previously all over the country. ICE detainers haven't been honored. It allows them to rape and kill again and again, as we have just seen with some of our recent young ladies who have perished at the hands of these folks. So my idea is this detention center is really a last stop. These illegal violent criminals are clogging up jails, creating problems locally. They need a place for central processing. If we can be of help, we want to be of help. This piece of property is adjacent to a good-sized road, an international airport, and then, of course, an international crossing with a bridge over the river. So we think it's ideally located. And again, we're just here to be a good partner with the Trump administration to be sure that these violent criminals that are hurting our sons and daughters are off of our soil.
Yeah. I mean, we heard a lot about freedom and rights for women in the election, and Laken Riley had all of that taken from her in Georgia, very sadly, and we watched that heartbreaking trial play out. But with regard,
Just think about your daughter. Think about your daughter. Think about your niece. Think about your just the people that you hold dear to your heart that have worked so hard in school, and all of a sudden they get to college and this is happening. What?
to what you're talking about, and this is something I think a lot of people don't focus on, there are a lot of illegal immigrants who are on the deportation list who are currently taking up space in U.S. prisons. Here's Kevin Stitt, the governor of Oklahoma. Watch.
Everybody that's in our prisons that are here illegally, that are breaking our laws, we believe in public safety. We want to protect the citizens of Oklahoma, and we want to be ready to get them out of our state and out of our country.
You know, the other side of that is the understanding of who will leave first and why. And I thought this was fascinating. This is some sound from Mexico. This is Christopher Padilla, who is a Honduran migrant, who says he is not afraid that if he gets across the border, that he will be deported. Watch this.
I watched an interview where Trump said there will be a deportation of anyone who committed a crime from any country. But for an immigrant who hasn't committed any crime, there won't be a deportation. So I'm not afraid of anything. Whatever happens, the dream is the American dream, and to be there.
So, John, what goes through your mind as you listen to that man?
Well, again, what we're talking about with this piece of property is just getting the violent criminals that are hurting our sons and daughters off of American soil. They shouldn't even be here in the first place. I think the talking points about ripping families apart and permanently separating families are really just the Democrats' desperate attempt to distract the American public from the fact that it is their policies that have led to the rape and murder of untold numbers of children, the hundreds of thousands of migrant children alone that are, quote, lost. We know that they're trafficked. We know terrible things happen to them. We cannot stand the complete absence of the rule of law. We need to get our communities safe again and get these violent criminals off American soil.
Very true. The cartels have been winning all across our border, making money hand over fist, trafficking young people into this country, into slave labor and sex trade, and that has to stop. I think everybody on all sides can agree to that. Thank you very much, John Buckingham, Texas Land Commissioner. Good to see you.
There are no words I keep telling people to describe the emotion when we walked up our driveway. We did not expect our home to be so devastated, truly catastrophic damage, and I think we're still in shock.
Angela King and her husband Christopher spoke to us on the program last month in front of their damaged home in Hurricane Helene back in October. It's just about a month and 1 day ago. Their family is one of thousands in the Southeast that are homeless and struggling with the early signs of winter as the cold weather sets in. Angela and Christopher King are back with us again in the aptly named Blowing Rock, where it's 30 degrees and the wind is howling. Angela and Christopher, we checked in with you a month ago. At the time, you said that you were in shock. You hadn't heard back from FEMA on a housing allowance. Where do you stand right now?
We are still currently waiting. We have been in the FEMA main office here in our home county numerous times. We're told we're just kind of in the queue. So we are still awaiting to hear final word.
I mean, we're seeing
So
on the
in the
left
meantime,
hand. Go
house
ahead.
hopping.
Go ahead, Angela.
I was just going to say, in the meantime, thanks to the generosity of friends and friends of friends, we are just kind of house hopping around until we see if we get that housing allowance.
Oh, my goodness. You told us last time you were here a month ago that you were couch surfing. Yeah, we should also point out that you've got 7 children with you. How does that work?
Well, we have just the younger children with us, although the other ones come and visit pretty frequently. I mean, it's working out okay. We do have somebody from Pennsylvania that we're working with, and hopefully get a tiny house back on our property. The challenge is that it is now winter, and it just makes building here that much more difficult.
So we were seeing pictures on the left-hand side of our screen of your home and how it was so badly damaged, I mean destroyed really, in Hurricane Helene. You told us that you had twice been denied by your insurance company in terms of money for a rebuild. Where does that stand now?
That still stands as it was. Unfortunately, we are still not going to receive any assistance from our insurance at this point.
Are you kidding me? Nothing?
Unfortunately, I am not.
I mean, think about this. I was affected by Hurricane Helene too, but I'm not even like close to what these people, were affected. The level they were affected by. Like I just lost my electricity. I lost my electricity for like 10 days or 12 days. I lost my internet for like 22 days. And of course, if there's no power, there's no electricity. If there's no power and there's no internet, my daughter cannot stay in the house. So I had to get an Airbnb in like another city close by, say like an hour away, and we had to stay there for like 2 weeks. So just thinking about what these guys are going through, it's just mind bugging for real. And FEMA is going through a lot right now. How are they even gonna have enough time to settle these people?
Not kidding. We are not going to receive at this point any assistance from insurance.
Oh my God. On top of all of this, Christopher, it's my understanding that you also recently had to restart cancer treatments. How's that going?
I did go down in October 22nd, several weeks after the storm hit, and had cancer treatments for prostate cancer. And I have to say, all in all, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm really pleased with where things stand with that. It's made it a little easier to have that part behind me, to be able to focus on family and be able to focus on getting our home back to where we need it to be.
Gosh, I can't imagine that on top of everything else that you've been going through. That we can see behind you, there's snow dusting the hillside. As we pointed out, it's 30 degrees there. The cold weather setting in, at least for the next few days. Angela, we've been seeing pictures of people who've been living outside their destroyed homes with their families in tents, while apparently FEMA workers not far away are living in heated trailers. The question I had for one of our guests earlier was, we've heard that FEMA has got all dozens and dozens of trailers. Why aren't they putting those in the neighborhoods where people have lost their homes?
I will say that I don't know about, we do know the FEMA workers from here are staying in Wilkesboro, which is about 45 minutes away.
Uh-huh.
I don't have any personal knowledge as to how many trailers they have, but we do know families, with several children that have been sleeping in their car and had to rely on other agencies to get them, emergency funds for hotel rooms.
Oh my gosh. So what are you going to do?
So our plan right now is to begin working on getting the tiny home built. It's going to be tight, but we're going to make it work. Move back home onto our property, so that we can then, I guess, through the generosity of people in the area, people reaching out to the community, get our home rebuilt. Until the tiny home is ready for us to move into, we've had friends or even friends of friends, complete strangers that we've never met, that have offered to let us move into their homes. It's like we said a month ago, it's still like couch surfing in college, except we're doing it with a household full of stuff and children.
Franklin, I was going to say that Blowing Rock also happens to be the home of Franklin Graham's Samaritan's Purse. Have they been of any assistance to you?
I cannot speak highly enough for Samaritan's Purse. I mean, fact is, we had 8 feet of mud on 2 different levels in our home, rock, trees, other debris. And once a local contractor came and shored the house up, Samaritan's Purse came in, and we can see our floors again. They came in with pickaxes, 5-gallon buckets, and shovels. They've worked for about 2 weeks, and they have us ready to get the house inspected by an engineer and start designing. Samaritan's Purse has sent out probably close to, maybe a little over at this point, 300 different volunteers.
Wow.
I can't speak highly enough of what they have been able to do for our little family.
Yeah, well, it's a great organization, no question about that. You told us a month ago you were living with full hearts and heads up high. We hope that you can keep them that way as the cold weather sets in. Christopher and Angela will check back with you. In the meantime, our prayers are with you.
One state migrant crime has reached is Virginia. Law enforcement there arresting an illegal immigrant for rape. Police say the Honduran national attacked a woman on a popular trail in northern Virginia. They say he's in the country illegally and has been arrested and released multiple times with a history of sexual assaults. And police are warning there could be more victims out there.
The Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua now has operations in 16 states. That's according to a Homeland Security memo obtained by the New York Post. Crimes linked to the group include murder, robberies, gun smuggling, as well as famous apartment takeovers in Colorado. Joining us now is Victor Avila. He is a retired special agent with ICE and Homeland Security investigations. He and his partner were ambushed by a Mexican drug cartel some years ago. His partner, Jaime Zapata, was killed in that incident. You know, Victor, all too well the dangers of Mexican drug cartels. This is a new danger from Venezuela. What's your assessment of Tren de Aragua?
It certainly is a danger and actually a national security threat. A lot of people are not talking about the links that the Tren de Aragua has to Venezuela and the regime there with Maduro over there. So Maduro has a lot of connections, obviously. We know that Hezbollah, Iran is present there, and the Tren de Aragua coming directly from the Maduro regime into our country. And by the way, mentioning the Mexican cartels, the latest that I've heard is that Tren de Aragua is now kind of feuding with the Mexican cartels to take over some of those areas and plazas to take over some of these smuggling schemes because they see the money and potential that they could make with that type of trafficking.
Yeah, they are nothing if not brash and willing to flex their muscles. Our Carrie Kupek, who used to work at the Justice Department for Attorney General Bill Barr, said when she was there in the DOJ, nobody even mentioned Tren de Aragua. It was all about MS-13. But take a look at this map and see how far that they have spread across the United States. You know, they are, Victor, almost like a cancer, literally metastasizing daily across the U.S.
I tell you, John, this is going to be the #1 priority for Tom Homan and the new administration to go locate these individuals and not just deport them, but actually investigate them because we have national security issues here. We need to know what the reason they came over there. This is not the type of migrant that came over because they want to have a better life. They actually have come here with a different agenda, and you've seen them taking over the apartment complexes, wreaking havoc, murdering. By the way, I was glad to see the verdict on the Laken Riley case and this animal get finally sentenced. But by the way, there's so many Laken Rileys out there. I just spoke to the mother of Lisbeth Medina, the cheerleader that was murdered last year in Texas. There's many of those that need the attention, the national attention of the American people that know that this is happening. And unfortunately, John, I get a message almost every day now, almost every day, of another crime committed by an illegal alien in this country, whether it's murder, whether it's rape, whether it's a property crime. And we've had about enough of this. We have enough crime in the U.S. to deal with, and then we have to somehow, deal with California and other states that want to protect them. Enough is enough, and we're going to make some serious changes come January 20th.
Yeah, just a little ways west of here on a bike trail that I used to use all the time. There was a woman who was raped by an illegal migrant from Honduras. Thankfully, they caught him. You talked about why Tren de Aragua is coming to the United States. Clearly, it seems to be the land of opportunity for them. Listen to the director of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation on what it's got its tentacles into.
We're aware that they are moving into different operations. They go from human trafficking to organized retail crime theft, and then they move into the drug trade, taking on the cartels in a very violent, bloody battles that they've had. And they also have zero respect for policing. They have attacked law enforcement officers throughout our nation.
I mean, they are becoming very diversified, and they don't seem to fear anybody.
They're involved in the fentanyl trafficking. Some have been arrested in Chicago doing that. Yes, in the human smuggling and human trafficking trade. And now they want to do it themselves. That's why they're in the feud with some of these cartels. And he's
Oh my goodness, what is that? What is that right there? I mean, think about what's going on in the United States right now. This should not be going on. Come on, man. That's so sad to watch.
absolutely right. This is the culture that they bring because they grew up hating the police. They were trained and told that the police is their enemy. This is very different than the culture that we grew up here in the U.S., respecting law enforcement and respecting authority. This is what we have to deal with. They absolutely have no respect for any life, especially a law enforcement officer. And this is what's going to be dangerous about it. This is the type of group that we will have to be approaching very methodically and very safely to take them out.
Yeah, this is absolutely horrendous, for real. This is straight up horrendous. Like, this is not what we should be talking about in 2024, now that we've had the good news, the 47th coming back. I mean, this shouldn't even be a conversation, but it is. Mm-hmm.
With less than 2 months left in office, President Biden is trying to shape the outcome of Russia's war in Ukraine with a surprising policy change. This week, Ukraine fired longer-range U.S. missiles into Russia for the first time after Biden gave them the go-ahead. After holding out for months, the president reportedly changed his mind after the Kremlin brought North Korean troops into the fight.
It could, in essence, freeze the territories that the Ukrainians have and that the Russians have. And so this could pave the way for negotiations at the current level right now.
In response, Russian President Putin revised the country's nuclear code, lowering the threshold for using nukes. And in a clear escalation, Russia fired a ballistic missile with several warheads into eastern Ukraine. It's the first time a missile of that kind has been used in the war. Kristen, is President Biden's last-minute shift on Ukraine smart?
I mean, he's certainly saying let her rip here at the end. I think he assumes that Donald Trump will come in and be less favorable to the Ukrainian cause. And so he's saying, do whatever you've got to make as much progress as you can now before I'm gone. I do think that one of the criticisms of him was that they were asking Ukraine to be too restrained early on when maybe Ukraine had a chance of putting this to bed when Russia was a little bit on the ropes. So it seems to me that he's really just trying to get as much out of their system before Trump comes into office.
Biden was reportedly worried letting Ukraine use American weapons to strike inside Russia risked escalation, even some said World War III. But given Trump's lack of support for Ukraine, President Biden apparently wanted to leave Kyiv in the strongest position for a negotiated settlement. Lulu, even some of Biden's supporters say, yeah, the policy switch, we understand it, but it's way too little, way too late.
Yeah, it's an act of desperation on his way out. And I don't know that it's going to have the intended effect, as Kristen points out, of actually leaving Ukraine in a stronger position. Putin's strategy has always been one of a waiting game, of waiting out the American system of democracy to leech support for Ukraine or have a different administration come in. So, I mean, he only has a couple of months before I think things will be much more favorable to him.
But it seems like what Biden is saying is this is going to end up in a negotiated settlement, and I want Ukraine to be in the strongest position it can, for instance, to keep its territory inside Russia in Kursk, so they have something to give back and forth.
Raihan's shaking his head.
Well, look, you will
Thank you for that.
You will recall, Chris, that on this program, I defended the Biden administration's previous position. They made a compelling case for a few different reasons. One, when you're looking at these ATACMS, in order to use them effectively, you would actually need U.S. aid in targeting the missiles. Otherwise, you're using, essentially a luxury automobile to do something that it's not really designed to do. So this is incredibly wasteful. We do not have many of these ATACMS. The Ukrainians do not have many of them. So this is a serious strategic error in my judgment. Do I think that the Ukrainians, should we have unleashed them earlier on? Maybe we could debate that. But when Biden and Lloyd Austin made the case recently that we are not going to let them use ATACMS on Russian soil, I think that was very sensible. Now, this is very reckless, last-minute stuff that I don't think is actually going to be especially helpful to Ukraine.
Then there's Putin's response, lowering the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. Here is the State Department's response.
I am unfortunately not surprised by the comments the Kremlin has made around the publication of this new revised nuclear doctrine. We will continue to call on Russia to stop bellicose and irresponsible rhetoric.
Nia, how seriously should the U.S. and the West take Putin's nuclear threat?
Listen, I think you have to take Putin, given his behavior so far vis-a-vis Ukraine, I think you have to take what he says seriously. This is obviously in response to what Ukraine has done, backed by the U.S., the weapons. And so in some ways, this was a bit of a blunder because it now has put Ukraine maybe in a more perilous position that's even going to be more perilous, right, once Donald Trump takes office. You saw him in that debate when asked about what does he want to see the outcome in terms of this war, and he just says he wants it to be over.
Right. He refused to say, I want Ukraine to win.
Exactly.
Raihan, Putin has rattled the nuclear saber before, but this was very chilling. This was an intermediate-range ballistic missile with multiple warheads that was they were conventional, but they were fully capable of being nuclear warheads instead of conventional warheads. How much should we make of this talk about a nuclear threat?
We should be very disturbed by it. And this was the background behind why the Biden administration earlier on was saying, let's be restrained in the use of these weapons on Russian soil. This is deadly serious. I think you hear a lot of people, a lot of smart, thoughtful people I agree with on a lot of things who've said, Russia's a paper tiger, don't take it seriously. My view is that this is a very combustible global situation, number one. Number two, one thing that really concerns me is that I think that part of the background here, why did the Biden administration not do this before, is because they were concerned about what happens to global markets, including global oil markets. And it almost seems as though, hey, we're not going to worry about that now. We're going to let Putin engage in this incredible escalatory rhetoric and really rattle global markets now that he's out the door. That, to me, does not seem very presidential and very statesmanlike.
And then
this is the game. Why didn't they do this before? Why is it happening now when the 47th is about to come into play? And he's always said he wants peace. The only way anybody can win in this situation is if they negotiate peace. It just has to be peace. Somebody has to have that conversation. Somebody has to be a diplomat and negotiate, have a conversation without escalation. Can't you have a conversation without escalation? I mean, can we try that?
Donald Trump takes office in January, and he talked during the campaign. He could end this war in 24 hours. I'm not going to ask you about the 24-hour part of it, Kristen, but how does this end?
I think this ends with Donald Trump putting pressure on our allies in Ukraine to accept a deal that involves them ceding some territory. I think that's the way this is going to go. I think that he's going to say the American people do not have as much appetite for continuing to send you assistance. And so take a good deal. Don't make this stretch out and wind up with a worse deal.
Of course, the question is, what's a good deal, Nia? And you know, one of the concerns, and it seems at this point, given the balance of power, is that a deal that would have to be made, particularly if Trump is basically pulling the rug out from under Zelensky and the Ukrainians, is that Russia gets to keep some of the territory that it has gained during this almost 3-year war.
That's right. You embolden Russia. They essentially win. You know, they invaded a sovereign country, and if they come away with parts of that country, what more might they do going forward? Particularly with a weakened West, particularly with a Donald Trump who's essentially saying we're not going to come to the defense of a country like Ukraine.
So if that were to happen, Lulu, that the war is negotiated, we only got a couple of seconds here, Russia gets to keep some of its gains. What's the message to Putin?
Message to Putin, that's always been the fear. The message to Putin is, hey, we can't, we're not going to protect you. Take what you want. It's all yours. And I think it leaves Russia in a much stronger position.
We are now learning that Ukraine is.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. God bless you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Double tap your screen. Let's get the likes up, guys. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes up. And let's subscribe to the channel. Okay, what is going on with Bibi Netanyahu? What is going on with Bibi right now? ICC has declared that he should be, I guess, arrested. So now he can't really go out of the statute of limitations right now. I mean, it's just wow.
The ICC's decision is outrageous, unlawful, and dangerous. Israel has a right to defend itself, and the ICC's rogue actions only enable the terrorists who seek to wipe Israel off the map. These actions threaten Israel, but left unchecked, they could pose a threat to the United States in the future.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister Yoav Gallant for alleged war crimes in Gaza. Let's bring in Rabbi Chaim Mentz from the Chabad of Bel Air here in Los Angeles, Israeli Special Operations veteran Aaron Cohen, along with the founder and executive director of the Lawfare Project, Brooke Goldstein. Thank you all for coming on. Brooke, to you first. You heard the Senate Majority Leader-elect John Thune there talking about the ICC. It is preposterous.
Absolutely. It's Orwellian, and it's really great to be here with you tonight, Trace. I'm actually joining from Chicago, where the Lawfare Project just announced a representation of the 2 students that were beaten viciously at DePaul University. And I want to tell you something. There is a direct link between the lawfare attacks we are seeing at the ICC, at the International Court of Justice, and at the United Nations, and the violence that we are seeing against Jewish students and Jewish people, frankly, all over the world. Because what is happening is the weaponization of the international legal system, which is framing Israel's self-defense as an international war crime, which we know it is not. And it creates this pretext for these fake social justice movements, which we know are just pro-terror movements, to then project their hatred of a foreign government, Israel, on Jews just for being Jews. And that's leading to the delegitimization and the violence and the hostile environments that we are seeing on campuses throughout this country.
Yeah, Aaron, to you now, because it looks like they are close to ceasefires, maybe in both against Hamas and Hezbollah. And I'm wondering if you think now, as they're pressing, the Israeli, the IDF are pressing to get in and get the jobs done.
Yeah, it's a good question, Trey. So, even though President-elect Trump doesn't speak Hebrew and he doesn't speak Arabic, like I've always said, which means he speaks the language of the Middle East. And Iran and Hamas are terrified the moment he got elected. Everybody threw up the ceasefire flag. So, but I can tell you this, and I just got off the phone with a friend of mine from the Shayetet, which is the Israeli SEALs, a lieutenant colonel, has been in for 35 years. It's very kinetic right now. Israel just neutralized 3 terrorists in Jenin, just outside of Jenin, in a very dynamic operation. And so it is very busy right now. Nothing is stopping. However, I do believe that Israel's military objective is going to be to trim as much of these hedges as possible so that in the event the brakes are pulled, there's going to be at least a nice buffer to help quiet things down.
Former Israeli cabinet member, the headline here is Times of Israel ex-Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked barred from entering Australia amid fears of incitement. It goes on to say, Rabbi, Shaked was denied a visa because she might incite discord. The act used to prevent her entry stipulates that people may be barred if it is believed that they may vilify a segment of the Australian community. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Just like the International Court is trying to dehumanize Bibi and the Jewish people, here you're having, once again, Australia dehumanizing a Jewish person that if you just come in, you're going to make a disruption of what's good here in Australia. The most important thing that people must know is just like they went after Trump, they now are going after Bibi. But just like Trump, who has 9 lives, Bibi has 9 lives. He's not going anywhere. And this is the last thing they can do is try to bring him to court, which is a phony court.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. Now back to you, Brooke. I want to read this, the Fox News headline, Jewish families decry rampant anti-Semitism by California school district in lawsuit. In a vocabulary matching test, students were instructed in California to define Palestine as a country that was formally recognized by the United Nations in 1947. He also claimed the same class included definition of Hamas as a political party continuing the fight against Israel. And this is happening all over California, Brooke.
Yes, and just as we see, Jew hatred disguised as political and legal advocacy in the International Criminal Court, now you're seeing Jew hatred disguised as some sort of progressive educational program. And what needs to be done is a total rehaul of our educational system. I am so encouraged by President Trump's willingness to say that he is going to cut off all federal funding for violation of Title VI at our schools that are happening right now. And we will work tirelessly at the Lawfare Project to ensure that the civil rights of the Jewish community, especially Jewish students and Jewish professors, are upheld, and they are deserved of equal protection under this law. It is absolutely outrageous.
But Rabbi, I mean, these teachers' unions in the schools in Los Angeles are dealing with this again and again and again, this anti-Semitic behavior.
Follow the money. See where the money's coming from. There's a lot of money coming from Qatar, a lot of money coming from Iran, and I got to tell you something. It has already been documented. There's a lot of videos of it, that there is money to go and teach our little children that Israel is not a good place, the Palestinians is the right ones, and our schools are failing. So you choose advocacy or education.
Lastly, Bernie Sanders tried to get certain weapons denied to Israel. Maybe he's been knocked down on that. But it seems like, there's this push to stop this, stop giving weapons.
But Bernie has been beating that drum for the last year, and he's been successfully shut down time and time again. I feel like he represents such an extreme fringe element of the left-wing radicals. And I don't get political, but the fact is Israel needs weapons. Israel needs to defend itself. Israel needs explosives. Israel needs JDAMs. There's 7 fronts that Israel's fighting right now. Bernie needs to sit down. He needs to cool his jets a little bit and let Israel continue to handle business.
Don't forget the Aaron Cohen Show on YouTube. It's great. You got to watch it. Aaron, Rabbi, Brooke, thank you all.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Whew. My daughter just saw her grandma and they're about to go see her mom. So it's just on another level. Okay, so, what is going on here with the... Dear Lord, I can still hear them.
Russia's responding to Ukraine's use of long-range U.S. missiles against targets deep inside Russia now by firing a new kind of medium-range ballistic missile into Ukrainian territory. Putin is calling the move a warning to the West. Comes after President Biden this week authorized the use of U.S.-made long-range missiles for Ukraine to strike inside Russia's Kursk region for the first time. General Jack Keane points out that Putin's specialty is combining just this kind of kinetic action with psychological warfare. Listen.
He's forced the Biden administration never to give the Ukrainians what they wanted when they wanted it. And it protracted the war. So Putin keeps coming. And that's what this is all about. Russia fully intends, after the Ukraine is finished with, to expand into Europe. And all the European nations know that.
Well, senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott's tracking the latest developments. Greg, what can you tell us this morning?
Jillian, just over 1,000 days into this war, and it's getting riskier all the time. More shockwaves from yesterday's strike by a brand new kind of Russian intermediate-range super-fast missile. It caused some damage and casualties in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, but also carried with it a big message. Just days after the U.S. and the UKAS allowed the use of its longer-range missiles inside the territory of Russia, Moscow basically saying anything you can do, we will do, with an even bigger punch. Russian President Putin on TV last night saying in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, he will respond decisively and reciprocally. His spokesman adding today the actions by the U.S. and its allies were reckless, noting Russia had demonstrated its capabilities and could do more. An indication of the nervousness. For the first time since the war started, a session of Ukraine's parliament was canceled due to fears of another attack. Yesterday's Russian missile carried conventional warheads but could be nuclear armed. Yet another message. And remember, earlier this week, the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv was shut down out of security concerns. Diplomatic voices around the world speaking out today. The Prime Minister of neighboring Poland said the threat of a global conflict is serious and real. China, of all countries, calling for calm and restraint. And Jillian, as for North Korea, which has been adding to all the tensions by sending some of its troops to fight alongside the Russians, said the U.S. is stoking tensions, and they warned of a nuclear war. A lot of talk and some very dangerous actions. Back to you.
Look at Beijing weighing in there. Got to leave it there. Greg, thanks so much. John.
All right, let's dig deeper on this now. General Keith Kellogg's a former national security advisor and Fox News contributor. It's been a minute, General. Welcome back from the campaign trail.
Good to be back.
Good to see you. Ukraine's ex-top general says World War III has begun. I'm sure that he would like the world to believe that so that the Allies throw in with Ukraine. But do you really see it that way?
No, I don't think World War III has begun, but we're right on the precipice. I mean, it's right there. And what I mean by that is when you look at what's happening, look at the alliance with President Trump kept apart. You know, he had North Korea over here, he had China over here, he had Iran here, and he had Russia over here. And what you've seen them now is they've all joined. You've got an axis together, and they're feeding off one another. You know, just in June, Russia signed a self-defense pact with North Koreans. So now, for the first time in its history, North Korea has exported fighters into Russia. Between 10 to 30,000 North Koreans are now fighting. You're seeing a use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile that can be nuclear-tipped, being shot at Dnipro, a city of around 900,000. So you're seeing this thing starting to build. And that, I think, internationally is going to be President Trump's biggest thing he's going to have to solve, which is the fight there in Ukraine and Russia, which happens to be the largest land war in Europe since the end of World War II. Yeah. So it's massive. So, and John, you know this, a simple spark can spin things right out of control. And without even trying out there. And
you assassinate one archduke and suddenly...
Yep, absolutely.
Good. Touche. General, talk to us about this new sort of sophisticated weapon that Putin is now. He launched some kind of medium-range ballistic missiles with a lot of warheads on it into Ukraine. Can you talk to us in layman's terms what it does and how alarmed people should be about it?
It's an intermediate-range ballistic missile based off range, and it's got MIRVs on it, multiple independent reentry vehicles, so more than one warhead. It can
Meaning
be
they
nuclear
can split up and hit a whole lot of targets.
They will break off and hit multiple targets. And again, it can be nuclear tipped. But they only used one, and it's basically a class of what they call truck-mounted intermediate-range ballistic missiles that they've got there. He's used it for psychological reasons, and Jack Keane made a great comment on that. He didn't use it because it was militarily effective, because it hit a city, not very much damage there at all. But he's kind of saying to the West, well, see what I can do. And this is one where people have backed off. President Biden's backed off. When the minute he said IRBM, ICBM, nuclear war, we said, oh my gosh, we can't go there. That's when you need to lean in, because he meaning Putin, he will not start a nuclear war in Europe. And you'd remind him, let me make sure you understand, the Brits have nuclear weapons, the French have nuclear weapons, we've got nuclear weapons, don't go there. And we haven't really said that to him. So it's kind of a psychological play, and I think Jack Keane's got it right. So he's kind of upped the ante in weaponry, just like Zelensky upped the ante when he went into the Kursk region with the long-range missiles, the ATACMS.
So everybody's wondering why Biden suddenly gave permission to Ukraine to launch these ATACMS deeper into Russian territory. Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about that yesterday at the briefing and gave a typical answer. Listen here.
For a long time, the White House argued that using these long-range ATACMS missiles into Russia to attack targets inside Russia would escalate the war, would really invite retaliation. Why change the policy now?
I'm just not going to get into specific about Ukraine's operations. Not something that I'm going to do today. But I want to be really clear.
But I guess I'm asking about the specifics of the White House's decision to change policy.
I'm just telling you that I'm not going to get into specifics from here from the podium.
Yeah, so that's what we've kind of gotten used to, saying nothing about everything. But why now? I mean, he's left this pile of dog, you know what, on Trump's doorstep.
You know, John, here's what I'm really hoping. I'm hoping that Jake Sullivan talked to Michael Waltz, who's the incoming national security advisor, or President Biden has talked to President Trump and said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm really hoping that happened, because what he has done, Biden, through his action. He's actually given President Trump more leverage.
Really?
Because now he can pull back, he can go left, he can go right, he can do something. And I think what he did is he basically said, well, this is what I want to do. And I'm hoping there's something to this. I don't know, but it does give the President Trump more ability to pivot from that.
Oh, that's interesting. All right.
Just one quick question before we let you go. We have like 5 seconds, General. But so you're not buying the White House's, the Biden administration's justification that they approved these new long-range weapons because of the North Koreans on the ground inside Ukraine?
It sounds good, but Jillian, what I'm really hoping is there was another reason to it, which gives leverage to President Trump. Maybe that may be a good reason to do it. Look, they should have been doing this a year ago, but they've basically pulled back. You don't fight a war allowing other countries to have sanctuaries. If you're going to fight a war, you fight a war. And we've basically pulled back on letting Zelensky fight a war that he should have been fighting a long time ago. And the casualties are horrific.
Yeah, of course.
But the advantages that he had this last summer are not there anymore, he meaning Zelensky.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't heard from Trump on the use of the attack.
And I think it's real. My thoughts to that are it's very smart.
Okay.
Hold fire.
All right, good. General, great to see you back.
Great to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Okay, see. Biden should not be doing anything that pertains to making decisions to send firearms and do anything that is just going to jeopardize the safety of the people. Over here, bro. Like, just relax. Can you relax and let the 47th resume in January before you at least have a conversation with him? I don't know if they're like in sync with this situation that is going on right now, him and Trump, but this is not something that I would say is the right move. But I'm not a commander-in-chief, okay? I'll let the commander-in-chief do what he has to do. He is the commander-in-chief, Joe Biden. And the 47th is the incoming, who is the president-elect. Let's see what he has to say about all of this stuff. But this isn't good look at all. This is not good look. Okay. Back to CNN.
For some, building a business is part of the American dream. For Black Americans, nearly 3% are living it. That's according to Lend.
All right. Chat, let me know. Chat, let me know if you have businesses in the chat. Any of you who have LLC, just put LLC in the chat. If you've started a business, if you're planning on starting a business, put LLC in the chat, okay? If you've ever started a business or you're doing business as or whatever, just put it in the chat. LLC. If you've ever registered your business, if you've had your EIN, if you've ever started a business bank account, if you have a business credit card, whatever you've done, put it in the chat. LLC. Inspire each other, because I'm learning. I'm trying to get information and because I just started this YouTube situation. I mean, you could tell I'm new to this. I'm not like some pro who knows what he's doing. And you could tell from the way I go live. I don't go live like the regular horizontal. I go like vertical. So I'm still learning, like I want to be able to go live horizontally so I can do so many things on my screen, just like the big YouTubers, because I'm new in this shit. So, well, I don't want to say shit, but I already said it. So put it in the chat. Let me know. Give your boy some game.
Tree. And they note that the city with the highest rate of businesses owned by Black people at roughly 9% is Atlanta. So the city makes sense as the host of this year's Black Entrepreneurs Day. There were conversations about building a business with business owners, both established and aspiring, like Kelly Rowland.
But entrepreneurship is just incredible to watch it around me. I think the first entrepreneur that I met was my mama T, Tina Knowles. And this is a Black woman in Houston, Texas, like having every woman coming outside of her hair salon. They were fly. I remember when En Vogue came in there and all of these different artists came in there, and I thought it was so incredible to watch her be so fabulous in the salon, but she came home and she'd make us food, and it was like a thing. I was like, wow, you can do it all. Maybe.
The creator of Black Entrepreneurs Day is Damon John, who you know from ABC's Shark Tank, and the iconic FUBU brand, which we're going to talk about FUBU in just a moment. But thanks for coming in.
Oh, I am excited to be here, man.
I appreciate it.
The best thing ever before shrimp and grits. All right.
I know it's early. I know it's early. Let me start here. We're going to talk about Black Entrepreneurs Day in a moment, but I know that there are some people who are just in this moment of transition who are a little worried.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic for entrepreneurs?
I'm always optimistic for entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs will change the world, you know. So whoever's going to be in office 4 years from now or 40 years from now, what does that matter to me? You know, I'm not planning my life and how to be of value to other people for the next 4 years, 8 years, or 12 years. It's for the rest of my life, and it's for my customers, and it's for my family and my legacy. So, you know, things are going to come. People are going to come and go and support causes and leave causes. That's not in my control. The only thing in my control is finding something that I can add value to my community. Whoever wants to buy and support, I want to support them.
At the top of the show, we talked about some of the DEI estimates or the attempt to get rid of DEI in government, maybe federal contractors. How much of that is a challenge for people who want to do business with the government that don't have access at this moment?
It is a challenge, of course. If you look at Black entrepreneurship, we make up a population. We're 14% of the country, and we're 3% of entrepreneurs. And you need to have people that work and think within your system that look like the people you serve. And a lot of government workers and people like that are people of color and women and veterans and various other things like that. So you're just going to have inferior products, more of inferior products, if you don't look and think like the people you serve within your system. However, a better thing to think about is large corporations are now saying, we don't care what the government's saying, we must do this because of social media and various other things. We need the transparency to say, we are making with people that look and think like you. And that's exactly why JP Morgan Chase and all the people came out to support, and Salesforce to support my program, because internally they have a mandate that they're like, I don't care what the government's doing. This is what we must do.
There is also the pressure from the other side on companies like John Deere and I don't want to misname Miller, other companies that have reduced, kind of pulled back on Jack Daniels as well, their DEI.
You know, DEI can get very tricky, but you pulled up somebody, perfect example. I know John Deere, and 4 or 5 of the executives been there 40 years are African American. And their program, they may think about reducing that there, but yet they're trying to gain back and give incentives to go and get 20 million acres of farmland that was owned by African Americans that were boxed out of their rightful properties and ownership. And that's their program. So they're doing and they're walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. It all depends on if you are going to serve your customer.
Let's talk about Black Entrepreneurs Day.
Let's talk about it.
Big day, year 5, and you have brought it for the first time to Atlanta.
I brought it to Atlanta. I brought it to the mecca of Black entrepreneurship, and I love it. And I actually got awarded a proclamation by Mayor Dickens and the Congress people out here. And it's absolutely been amazing. And we had a really amazing night. Actually, we watched Flavor Flav play 3 instruments. You know he can play up to 14, I believe.
He is a surprise every time I see it.
Fascinating. Entrepreneurs came out, and we gave away, and we hit the mark of over $1 million giving away, and we funded now, given away grant-free money to over 40 businesses, African-American owned businesses. I started 5 years ago, and today we are in Atlanta, and I love it.
What do you tell people? Because I imagine there were some in the audience who are considering entrepreneurship and are not yet entrepreneurs. What's the advice for people who are just standing at the edge and not yet taking that leap?
Do the power of broke. You know, African Americans, we're resilient people. We've been bartering and trading since the beginning of time, but we've never formalized it. It's always been a side hustle, right? Do the power of broke and do your homework and create a structure. That's the most important part. The financial intelligence, creating a structure in a business so that when you do want an investment, I can actually invest in you. If you have a company and somebody else has a company and you can't take money in and your receipts are in a shoebox or stuff like that, well, how am I going to ever get paid back? Where's my money going? It's normally the foundation, just like in a house, just like in a family, just like in a business. It's creating that great foundation.
Power of broke.
Power of broke.
What is it?
You ain't got nothing.
Yeah.
You're going to figure it out. Money often in a small business highlights your weaknesses. If you have a weak conversion or weak campaign, well, buying more of that campaign is not going to increase your sales. If your product is crap, you've been watching too much Shark Tank, but you want 50% margins, so you're buying more to get a better margin in your product, you still got a bunch of product coming back to your warehouse or your garage. It's usually about thinking outside the box and using OPM, which should be other people's money, but other people's manufacturing, mind power, manpower, marketing, and mentorship. And of course, like I did with Timberland, making a profit off of other people's mistakes.
Let's talk about FUBU.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
First runway show in at least, 15
years out here in Atlanta.
A bit of a relaunch here in the U.S. Why now? Why is now the time?
Well, I think it's a great time to come back because, people who grew up on FUBU are saying bring it back. And we've been doing great business in Malaysia and Germany and South Africa for many years. But, the new generation is finding us. That's what happens with fashion. People go and people come back. And, we love it. We love the fact that, we created the first hashtag of clothing years ago. And it was not only about African Americans, it's about supporting whatever your culture is. And FUBU is a sign of empowerment and people want it back. So we're here to bring it back and we love it.
I certainly had my FUBU.
Yeah.
I certainly did. Damon John, I
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show one more time. You know what time it is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, I might hop on to do the horizontal live, but before that, I'm gonna do this guy right here. Has Kamala changed the Democratic Party? Let me know. Has Kamala changed the Democratic Party? Has she changed the Democratic Party? Let me know, guys. Let me know in the chat. She changed the Democratic Party. Some people are saying she has because, now she just exposed everything going on with the Democratic Party. It's like, what is going on?
Kamala Harris smashed the Democratic Party to pieces with a $2 billion hammer. Now the kingmakers are tearing each other apart, trying to seize control and rebuild the party from the bottom up. But what's the Democratic Party without any money? Kamala burned through $100 million a week during her little campaign. Now Democrats are in debt. She didn't win a single swing state and was the first Democrat to lose the popular vote in 20 years. So what'd Kamala do with her billions? New reporting from The Times shows Kamala gave $2 million to influencers and spent $10 million on concerts. Kamala blew $900.
What is going on right here? Kamala paid $900K to put her face on this fair. Jesus. Jesus. What is going on here? She spent what? She spent $1 million to put her face on this fair? Come on, man.
$100,000 to put her face on the Las Vegas Sphere. And originally it was reported she paid Oprah $1 million for an interview. It's actually $2.5 million. They built a venue for a rally in Pittsburgh, but then had to tear it down because the Secret Service told them it wasn't secure. If only they'd done that in Butler. More than $500,000 went to Al Sharpton and Roland Martin, both people who just so happened to give softball interviews to Kamala. I'm not sure it's connected at all. And she spent thousands on Uber Eats and ice cream.
I thought they were doing this for just out of love, out of joy, out of good vibes, out of the first woman president coming in. That's what I thought was happening. So they paid for. Dude.
I guess Joe's holdovers liked ice cream just as much as the big guy. While Kamala was eating dessert and making her friends richer, her staffers were getting stiffed. Kamala stopped paying some of her top staffers over the weekend, and now the DNC's firing hundreds of employees. The staffers are furious. One told Axios, quote, if they want to be the party of the working people, they should have more respect for their workers. There's an inauthenticity in how they talk about workers, and clearly voters feel the same thing. The heads are rolling and the Democrat grunts are revolting. To us, it's obvious why Kamala lost. But some people are still scratching their heads.
I don't know why the Democrats lost. I don't understand why prices have come down. The economy is good. I don't know why they voted against her. Against the party.
Others are still saying Kamala lost because America's sexist.
He's a great candidate, a great resume, but in some people's minds, anybody that's not white and male is lousy. And we know that to be the case in this country.
But Slick Willie says Americans aren't sexist. We love women, just the right kind.
I think it would probably be easier for a conservative Republican woman to win.
Democrats are off message, and they don't have a leader to bring them together.
Look, I think Democrats are in the wilderness, as you just said before. There is no clear leader of the party. Joe Biden is going to be out of office shortly. Kamala Harris just lost the election. There are a lot of governors and other people who might emerge, maybe people we don't know about yet. Right. But there is no clear leader of the party right now.
There's a power struggle behind the scenes in the Democrat Party right now. They already told Pelosi to take a seat, and now AOC is telling Obama to take a hike. A lot of people want to bring Obama-era insiders back for party-building purposes. While those folks ran successful presidential campaigns, they also oversaw some of the largest down-ballot losses in modern times. Party building is different. Look to people with recent successes. Obama used to be a Democrat darling, but this election ruined his rep.
But boy, Obama during this Kamala Harris administration, it changed my opinion of that guy.
Really? Did you have a high opinion of him before?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did, just as an intelligent person, a statesman. But watching him just straight up lie about Trump, the thing that got me was that very fine people thing, the white supremacist thing. They just kept trying to say that he was a racist, which is this thing that I think worked in like 2017.
Yeah.
I think it worked back then. I don't think it works anymore. I don't think people believe it anymore. I think that we've gotten numb to all this stuff.
Obama cooed Biden, and then Kamala kamikazed the entire party. Republicans have the House and the Senate, and Trump's cabinet nominations are rolling out. Fetterman says Democrats have to chill.
It's still not even Thanksgiving yet. And if we're having meltdowns, every tweet or every appointment and all those things, it's going to be 4 years.
Democrats need to stop panicking. Stop talking. Start listening.
We lost. And I just want to say this to the Democrats. Do me this favor. Shut the up. When you win, you get to say what you want to. When you lose, you need to shut the hell up.
And when Democrats start listening and they don't like what they hear.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. I have one question for you guys. Have any of you seen ads on your screen? Let me know. Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat because I'm getting like a notification about ads. Have you guys seen any ads while you've been watching this stream right now? Let me know. Have you seen any ads while you've been watching the stream? Just put yes or no in the chat. Have you seen any ads that you had to skip or anything like that in the chat or while you were watching the stream? Let me know.
Debate. Don't censor and smear. They've purged everybody they disagreed with from their party and had no idea they were going to lose because they only talk amongst themselves. And it helps if you're a little more likable.
Stop screaming at people to get with the program and instead make a program worth getting with. And a good first step toward that goal would be to make the voters not want to punch you in the face.
And they really need to drop the weird stuff. One Democrat told Politico, I don't want to be the freak show party, like they've branded us. Moderate Democrats are making a play to take back the party from radicals. They're looking from, someone new to run the DNC. But this time, DEI isn't even on the table. A DNC member said it's white guy winter. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. Okay, we're going to go to the horizontal live. We're doing the vertical right now. Are you guys going to tune into that one? Because for some reason, we never get like crazy views on that one. But I got to start doing that one so I can build some, what would I call it? So, because for the shorts, it's like, the algorithm get it to people, just random people. But for the horizontal live, it actually goes to the people who are really interested in the content. So we're gonna start doing the horizontal live, and then we're gonna mix it with the shorts live. But however, you guys are the best. Get the likes up, subscribe to the channel, and I love you guys. I'm gonna be back in like 5 minutes. God bless you. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in God. Okay. I love you guys. Thank you to the veterans in the chat. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. Shout out to Dennis. Shout out to Average Joe. Shout out to um, Hakeem, shout out to James, shout out to Shag number one, shout out to GTA, man, shout out to everybody, man. God bless you guys. Trixie, you know what time it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got to dip. I will be back out. I'm gonna be back here in like 3 to 5 minutes, and I gotta change my dimension for my live stream. I love you guys.